Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore, the case of Miriam Bielte. Miriam Bielte grew up in Hildesheim, Germany, where she excelled in school after completing her studies. She was accepted into the University of Hanover, where she studied mechanical engineering for 5 years and earned a master's degree immediately after graduation. She found a good job as an engineer at a small design company a few years later. In mid-2018, she changed jobs to work for a larger car manufacturer, where she took on the role of design engineer. In 2019, Miriam lived in her hometown of Hildesheim. She was not in a serious relationship, so she continued to live with her parents. She worked for an international company and frequently traveled abroad. At the end of March 2019, the company sent her on another business trip, this time to Southeast Asia to meet with some suppliers. Miriam took additional leave to combine work with vacation. Miriam decided to extend her stay in Thailand. She had heard about the beautiful beaches and rich history of the country and wanted to experience this beauty firsthand. After completing her business negotiations with the suppliers, she boarded a flight to Bangkok. Although traveling alone can be risky, Miriam is experienced and knows how to navigate a foreign country safely. She prioritized her safety during her short vacation by following some important rules, avoiding going out alone after dark, keeping her valuables safe, and always being wary of strangers. Unfortunately, we cannot predict other people's intentions, making it difficult to know whether they might cause us harm. Soon after arriving in Bangkok, she took a trip to Pattaya, located in the southeast of Thailand. Just off the coast was Koh Si Chang, an island she wanted to explore. On Sunday, April 7, 2019, at the age of 20, Miriam bought a ferry ticket to Koh Si Chang for a few hours, planning to return to Pattaya in the evening. Her simple goal was to enjoy fresh local seafood, visit some of the island's ancient temples, and soak up the seaside atmosphere. By noon, Miriam had arrived on the island. She quickly rented a motorbike, a common mode of transportation in Thailand. Using Google Maps, she planned her route and set off on her adventure. One of her destinations was a white stone temple located on a hilltop. The temple was famous for housing the footprint of the Buddha and was established by the ruling Chakri dynasty, making it important to Buddhists. The temple was tucked away in a quiet location. Miriam loved being in peaceful places, away from the hustle and bustle of tourists. She had no idea what awaited her there. After reaching her destination, Miriam parked her motorbike near the flower stall at the foot of the hill. She greeted the vendor and headed toward the temple. The hike ahead was challenging and best suited for those in good physical condition. Surveillance footage captured Miriam climbing the stone steps to the monument. However, Miriam ascended the steps but never returned. This was puzzling because the stone steps were the only way down the hill. Her rented motorbike remained parked at the foot of the hill, near the flower stall. Although the temple is situated on a beautiful hill, there are no other attractions nearby, making it unclear why she took so long and why she did not return. As night fell and she had not yet contacted anyone, her relatives in Germany began to worry that something might have happened to her. The next morning, April 8, a Thai tourist walked along a deserted path leading to the white stone temple that housed the footprint of the Buddha. About halfway up, he noticed a small ravine beside the stairs. Curious, he went closer and was shocked to discover the body of a young woman with fair skin. She was found dead, lying between two large boulders, covered in branches, leaves, and old debris. The visitor quickly alerted the police to the gruesome discovery. Officers rapidly climbed the hillside to the site where the body was discovered. The victim was identified as a German woman named Miriam Bielte. After examining the scene, police determined that her death was not an accident. Miriam was found with a broken leg and multiple injuries to her head and face, consistent with being struck by a heavy object, such as a brick or stone. It was tragic when it was discovered that Miriam had been abused before her death. However, the exact circumstances surrounding her death remain unclear. The stone shrine dedicated to the Buddha has only one entrance and exit, which was monitored by a surveillance camera that recorded Miriam as she climbed the hill. It was soon revealed that an unidentified young man had been seen going up the stairs with Miriam, making him the prime suspect. The police quickly identified him. Security footage showed him arriving on a motorbike and parking at the foot of the hill. He spoke briefly to the florist and bought a small bouquet of marigolds before heading to the temple. The florist noticed the young man closely following Miriam and then saw him walking down the stone stairs alone. He was wearing dark clothes, and the florist thought his jacket and pants looked wet and had something red on them. Concerned, the florist asked the young man if everything was okay. The man said he had just fallen, sensing something was wrong. The florist tried to recall the young man's appearance and noted down the model of his motorbike and the license plate number. The florist then shared his observations about the suspicious man with the police. The police discovered that the motorbike belonged to a 24-year-old man named Ranakorn Romruin, a local resident of Koh Sichang Island. Ranakorn lived alone and owned a small boat as well as a motorbike. He worked as a beach cleaner during the day, where he paddled around in the boat, collected trash, and cleaned the beach. Locals described him as a quiet and solitary man after work. Ranakorn would often go home, watch TV, and drink beer, leading a lifestyle similar to many other young people his age. However, few knew that he was struggling with serious personal problems. Ranakorn battled drug addiction and regularly used methamphetamine. The day after Miriam was murdered, Ranakorn was arrested as he returned home from work in the evening. He was taken to the police station for questioning, and a few hours later, he confessed to the crime. Ranakorn stated that on the morning of Sunday, April 7, he woke up, skipped breakfast, drank 2 beers. He then used methamphetamine and got on his motorbike to travel around the island. His trip ended at the foot of a temple. Ranakorn spotted Miriam as she was climbing the stone stairs. At that moment, an idea struck him when he saw an attractive girl with fair skin at the foot of the hill. He noticed a flower stall and bought a small bouquet of marigolds. Ranakorn then followed Miriam up the stairs. When he caught up with her, he tried to strike up a conversation. Miriam felt uncomfortable, and after he gave her the flowers, he suggested they could be intimate on the hill before going to the temple. Miriam refused, but Ranakorn continued to ask inappropriate questions. Miriam became frightened and tried to run away from the stranger, but he kept chasing her. Eventually, he grabbed her and dragged her into the dense forest. Miriam screamed and struggled to escape, but there was no one around to help her. After he completed what he intended to do, Miriam found an opportunity to escape. She ran down the hill, putting as much distance as possible between herself and him. Meanwhile, Ranakorn had a disturbing thought. He realized he needed to catch up with her to eliminate any possibility of being caught. If he let her go, he would likely end up in jail. Ranakorn stood up, dusted himself off, and ran after Miriam. Unfortunately, in her panic, while descending the hill, she fell and injured her leg. Ranakorn caught up to her and picked up a large rock from the ground. Hitting her on the head, Miriam died from the injury. Ranakorn then dragged her up the hill, placed her on a rocky spot, and covered her with leaves, twigs, and old rubbish. However, the body was eventually discovered by a Thai tourist after committing the crime. Ranakorn returned home, quickly washed his bloody clothes, lay down on the couch, watched TV, and finished a pack of cigarettes. This was his last evening of freedom during the reenactment of the crime scene. Ranakorn recounted the final moments of Miriam's life while his head was covered with a blue bag to protect his identity. Thai police closely monitored the investigation And just 3 months after the tragedy, the trial began. The main evidence against Runcorn included surveillance camera footage, a witness's testimony from the flower stall, and Runcorn's own confession, although Runcorn did not directly apologize for his actions. His mother did so in court on his behalf. The mother said that she and Runcorn did not live together and were unaware of her son's actions. His actions shocked her, and she urged the court to impose the harshest sentence on him. In Thailand, the maximum penalty for murder is the death penalty. Runcorn's mother feared that if he were released, he might commit a similar crime and take the lives of others. She supported the court in imposing the death penalty on her son. Runcorn is currently awaiting execution. The island community was horrified by the news of the death of 26-year-old Miriam. Thailand is generally a peaceful country, and it is sad that a local man would treat a tourist so cruelly. Koh Si Chang has never seen such brutality before, and the residents hope this incident will not disrupt their lives or deter visitors. The Koh Si Chang community came together to express their grief. People of all ages and occupations gathered at the site of Miriam's death. Carrying candles and flowers, they mourned, prayed for her soul, and offered their condolences to her family. Thailand's economy is heavily dependent on tourism, and negative publicity can be very damaging to the country's economy. This is why the Thai authorities prioritize the swift resolution of crimes involving tourists. However, there are times when details of such cases are kept under wraps and not shared with the public. Hi everyone, thanks for returning. Let's unravel another horrible case. The case of Linda Sturmer. Linda and Todd Sturmer met in 1989 when they were both 25 years old. After that, they quickly developed feelings for each other. At the time, she was in the process of divorce and had 2 daughters. She and Todd married a few years later. In August 1993, she gave birth to twins, Trevor and Trenton. The 2 sons later shared that they loved their father very much, describing him as a great father and as an ideal role model. He always spends time coaching, teaching sports, and encouraging his children to have a healthy lifestyle. He is also known as a family man who always puts his family first. Together with Linda, he took in a nephew who was just 2 years old when he was left without a family. Raising him as one of their own, the Sturmer family lived happily together, including Todd, Linda, and 5 children. However, over time, Linda began to notice that Todd was becoming more and more irritable. Linda's daughter from her first marriage, Ashley Gibson, said she had witnessed he throwing a laundry basket at her mother. He would often go out with friends, disappear at night, and return home drunk, aggressive, and yelling at his wife. Linda had to do all the housework by herself. When Ashley was 11 years old, Todd began to lose his temper and yell at her, saying that she was a 2-legged dog just like her mother. Linda, he said that she would become a whore just like her mother. He also beat her with his hands and even a belt. Linda confirmed that Todd was also violent towards her. On one occasion, in a fit of rage, he hit she in the face, leaving her with a bruise on her cheek. Todd later sent her flowers and apologized, saying that he deeply regretted his actions. Unfortunately, the abuse didn't stop and continued to happen repeatedly. However, Trevor and Trenton denied this information, saying that they never saw Todd using force on Linda or Ashley. They also said that they never saw bruises on Linda's face. Linda's mother admitted that she never trusted Todd. She described he as someone who could be very charming, but he can also be the worst person in the world, according to her. He was often controlling of Linda, and if things did not go as planned, Linda was responsible for everything. She also admitted that she always felt worried about her daughter. On January 7, 2007, in rural Lawrence, Michigan, a fire broke out in the home of Todd and Linda Sturmer. It was a normal Sunday afternoon. She was washing towels in the basement, while her husband, Todd, was watching TV in the living room. At around 3 p.m., she heard her husband screaming from the living room. When she rushed to check, she found the living room consumed by flames. Todd was in the middle of the room, desperately trying to extinguish the fire, although she couldn't see him clearly through the flames. She could hear his screams. She rushed out of the burning house without taking her shoes, coat, or phone, all of which were left inside. Without a phone to call for help, she took her husband's truck and drove to the nearest place to seek help. Linda got into the truck, which had the keys in it. Weather reports indicated light rain mixed with snow that day, and she said the roads were wet and muddy. This made it difficult to get the van moving. As the tires spun in place and the clutch struggled to engage while trying to maneuver the van, she suddenly noticed through the side window that Todd had emerged from the burning house. She yelled for him to get in the car, but he didn't listen. He was badly burned. She rushed out of the truck, ran to him and yelled, telling him to lie down on the ground to put out the fire on his body and clothes. Linda then got back in the car and drove to Todd, then took him to the hospital. However, as she drove, she lost sight of him and had no idea where he had gone. Near the house, the ground was muddy and slippery, making it difficult to control the car. In addition, the truck's tires were old and worn. Despite the difficulty, she still tried to move the car slowly and carefully to get closer to the house. She steered the truck onto a sandy road, hoping that the surface would give the truck better traction. Meanwhile, neighbors called 911 to report the fire and rushed to help. They approached Linda, asked where Todd and her sons were, but she was so frightened that she could not answer clearly. She pointed toward the front door, saying the last time she saw Todd, he was near that area. The neighbors searched where she had indicated, but couldn't find him. After circling the burning house, they discovered he lying on the side of the house. Near where Linda had left the van, he was on his back, with his head facing the house. Linda said she had no idea how her husband, Todd, ended up in that location. He was severely burned, and most of his clothes had been destroyed by the fire. Although still alive, he was unable to speak. Linda ran to him, crying and pleading for him not to leave her. Shortly after, police, firefighters, and paramedics arrived. Rescue workers tried to save Todd, but his injuries were so severe that they couldn't attach a defibrillator. Sadly, 42 years old, Todd Sturmer died near his home from extensive burns and carbon monoxide poisoning. Upon further investigation, police discovered blood on the bumper and undercarriage of the van. It was determined that Linda had accidentally run over her husband, Todd. However, she maintained that she didn't know how or when it occurred, insisting it was not intentional. After the fire was extinguished, detectives launched an investigation. They thoroughly examined the scene and interviewed close friends, neighbors, and the two sons, Trevor and Trenton, who lived in the family home. Trevor and Trenton claimed to know their mother, Linda, well and suspect that the story of the fire is not simple. They believed that she was hiding something. Trevor directly asked his mother if she had crashed her car into Todd. She deflected, saying she did not want to discuss it, and then burst into tears. The brothers could not believe that their father, Todd, who was in excellent health, could have been so severely injured in the fire. While she was completely unharmed, they also disclosed that their parents' relationship had been deteriorating recently. Todd and Linda frequently argued and had even talked about getting a divorce. Just a day before the fire, they had a heated argument. The fight started after Todd accused Linda of being unfaithful. She vehemently denied this and insisted that she had always been faithful to her husband. However, she admitted that they had argued the day before, but said it was over money. The Sturmer family is having a lot of financial trouble, and Linda blames Todd for it. He runs a glove and sometimes suits business, but Linda accused him of being lazy and unwilling to work. She recently discovered that he had borrowed money from his mother, which led her to confront him. She questioned why he needed the money and why he didn't work harder to earn it. Linda works at a dialysis center and has a very busy schedule. She wakes up at 5 a.m. every day to go to work. According to the news, Todd is in debt of about $75. He hasn't paid his mortgage in months and spends most of his income on personal expenses. However, Trevor and Trenton believe that their mother, Linda, is also responsible for the family's financial difficulties. According to Trevor and Trenton, Linda often uses all of her family's savings for her hobby of horses. She was obsessed with the animals and owned up to 30 horses. Todd was very upset that his wife spent so much time, effort, and money on them. She had a credit card with a limit of $25, and she often spent it all. Therefore, they often argued about this issue. Despite this, she believed that she could make money from those horses. She also admitted that Todd threatened her, warning that if the horses did not produce profit, he would find a way to get rid of them. As investigators questioned Linda, they became more and more suspicious of her. They began to carefully examine her every move that day. It turned out that she had stopped by a gas station early in the morning, according to the clerk. She did not put gas in the car, but in a tank. This was later confirmed when police found an empty gas canister in the courtyard of her house, which still contained traces of gasoline. Linda explained that she had run out of milk that morning, so she went grocery shopping and stopped by the gas station. She presented a receipt showing she spent only $11 on gas. She claimed she didn't need to fill her SUV's tank completely, adding just enough to ensure her sons had fuel for an upcoming trip. Upon returning home, she said she woke her sons, encouraged them to take her SUV, and arranged for them to go to the movies with a friend. She gave them both money and the car keys. Linda told investigators that she had expected to have an argument with her husband that day, so she didn't want her sons to hear it. She frankly admitted that she intended to tell her husband about her plans for divorce and had seriously considered it. Even seeing a lawyer, she had planned to pack up and leave the house that day. She also shared that the decision was not easy, as she and her husband had been officially together for 13 years. Detectives spent 2 years investigating and concluded that Linda drove her truck into her husband, Todd, after he fled their burning home on June 5, 2009. Prosecutors believed they had sufficient evidence to arrest Linda on charges of arson and her husband's murder. She appeared in court on January 5, 2010. The evidence was primarily circumstantial, focusing on Linda's behavior before and after the fire. Their sons, Trevor and Trenton, testified that on that Sunday morning, she urgently forced them to leave for the cinema and did not let them say goodbye to their father, claiming he was asleep. In court, they suggested that their mother may have given their father a high dose of sedatives or illegal substances. This theory was supported by Linda's former friend and co-worker, Kate Fox. Kate said that, after the tragedy, Linda once confessed that she was afraid investigators would find the coffee cup she used to mix the banned substance for Todd. However, autopsy results did not detect any signs that Todd was under the influence of banned substances. Kate also claimed that Linda had previously discussed ways to get rid of her husband, Todd, including hitting him with a car. She denied these allegations, stating that Kate disliked her due to workplace conflicts. Additionally, Kate brought up her affair with a colleague, Chris Williams. Chris confirmed their romantic relationship and stated it began before the tragedy. While she admitted to the affair, she insisted it only started after she became a widow. She accused Kate of inciting Chris to lie in court to get back at her. In addition, her lawyer presented evidence that Kate was mentally ill while in custody. Some of Linda's cellmates reported that she admitted to starting a fire in her house while Todd was asleep. Another inmate claimed that Linda told them she had hit Todd in the head. Prosecutors argued that she doused Todd in gasoline while he was sleeping and set him on fire. Gasoline traces were found on his sweatpants, underwear, and socks. However, gasoline was also found on the clothes of a neighbor who had covered Todd with his jacket while he lay on the ground. Moreover, gasoline traces were detected on a towel Linda was reportedly washing in the basement before the fire. She claimed Todd had been working on the stove that day and spilled fuel oil on the towel. She explained that the towel smelled bad, so she attempted to wash it. Linda's lawyer argued that Todd had set the fire himself and died because of his own actions. No traces of gasoline were found on her clothing. Additionally, it was revealed that he had previously been suspected of arson twice. 2 of his houses had mysteriously burned down, both times when he was in debt and facing financial troubles. However, the prosecutor dismissed these claims, emphasizing that after Todd escaped the burning house, Linda hit him with her car and failed to call 911. The prosecutor accused she of being a liar, manipulator, and even referred to her as a devil. In 2010, 3 years after Todd Sturmer's death, the judge delivered the verdict. Linda Sturmer was found guilty of arson and first-degree murder. This ruling has caused serious conflict within the family. Todd's sons, Trevor and Trenton, supported their late father, while the daughters sided with their mother. Linda, she was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Despite this, she continued to fight for her freedom for the next 5 years. Linda appealed several times to the state court and the Michigan Supreme Court, but all were denied. She then filed a petition in federal court, arguing that her attorney's failure to hire a fire investigation expert hurt her case. An experienced fire investigator has criticized the investigation at the Sturmer home, calling it a shoddy one. The expert said that police did not collect enough combustible material for analysis, and there was no evidence that Linda poured gasoline on Todd and set him on fire. In 2016, Linda's new attorney filed an amended petition that included findings from a fire expert 2 years later. In October 2018, a federal judge granted a retrial. During the proceedings, Linda suggested that a coal might have accidentally fallen from their living room fireplace, igniting the floor and starting the fire 2 months later. Just before Christmas 2018, the judge announced his decision. He ruled that the prosecutor had been wrong to tell the jury that Linda had 2 cell phones. As there was no evidence to support this claim, the judge criticized Linda's defense team for failing to consult with a fire expert, which was detrimental to her. The judge also noted that while Kate testified against Linda, she suffered from mental health issues, raising doubts about the credibility of testimony. In December 2018, nearly 12 years after the fire, Linda's conviction was overturned, and she was released from prison. By that time, she had served about 9 years. In 2019, about a year after her release, the Michigan Attorney General appealed to reinstate Linda's conviction. Her daughters were terrified that their mother might be sent back to prison. On December 3, 2019, Linda, her daughters, and her mother attended the hearing. This time, the focus shifted away from the fire and onto the fact that Linda had run over her husband with her car. Linda maintained that she did not hit Todd intentionally. She explained that she had been in a state of panic and was unsure how or when it happened. She insisted that she never intended to harm or kill her husband. In 2020, the appeals court ruled in Linda's favor, upholding the judge's decision to vacate her conviction. However, the prosecutor's office continues to pursue the case while awaiting the outcome. Linda attends all hearings and appreciates the freedom she now enjoys. She now lives with her daughter Ashley, works to save money, and dreams of one day buying a new home. However, her sons, Trevor and Trenton, no longer call her mom. To them, she is just Linda. They do not forgive her for the death of their father, Todd, even after her release. They still believe that she is responsible for their father's death. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Corey Richens. The death of a loved one is a devastating tragedy that deeply impacts family members and children. Each person handles the loss in their own way, trying to deal with the blow of fate. To cope with this shock, Corey Richens, a woman, wrote an entire book. It seemed that she, more than anyone else, understood the depth of what happened. However, As the police delved deeper into the tragic death of a man from Utah, it became increasingly clear that there was more cynicism. Eric Richins was born in 1982 as the eldest of 3 children, with 2 younger sisters, Katie and Amy. He shared a special bond with Katie. The family lived in Summit County, Utah, where they were well known and wealthy, thanks to their cattle ranch. Many buildings in the town still bear the family's last name. Despite their prominence, the Eric were humble and kind, and they were respected by everyone who knew them. Eric grew up on his parents' farm, where he participated in sports and helped with chores. His family was part of the Mormon Church, and religion played a major role in Eric's life. He spent 2 years on a mission trip to Mexico City, where he demonstrated good character by helping the community. Upon his return, Eric attended the University of Utah, where he earned a bachelor's degree in international law. During this period, Eric began dating Julia Jurgensen. They married when Eric was just 20 years old. However, due to their youth and desire for independence, they couldn't maintain the marriage and decided to divorce. After his studies and the failed marriage, Eric saw promising opportunities to start a construction business, which he began to pursue. Eric frequently visited the Home Depot store, where he enjoyed chatting with the cashiers while waiting for his order. During his visits, he noticed a charming cashier named Curry, who was widely considered one of the most beautiful women in town. Eric was captivated by her beauty and secretly in love with her. But he hesitated to ask her out because he was still dealing with the emotional and financial fallout from his difficult divorce. Eric's celibacy continued for a while, but eventually, he asked Curry out, and she agreed. Their first date was filled with laughter and fun. They got along well, and their relationship developed quickly. The couple was truly happy despite their significant difference in social status. Eric was always cheerful and sociable, able to cheer her up on Curry's worst days. Despite the shock from his first marriage, Eric quickly realized that Curry was the one for him and soon proposed. She accepted, and after a whirlwind romance, they got married in 2013. Curry was not only beautiful but also intelligent. She attended her chosen university and earned a bachelor's degree in health management, followed by a master's degree. Curry had previously worked as an administrator at a design agency before meeting Eric in a hardware store. Curry became a new ray of light and hope for him, giving him confidence that he could build a loving family. Curry was born in 1990 in an ordinary family. Curry has an older brother and an older sister. Her father died at the age of 57 in 2010 after struggling with alcoholism. He was unable to witness Curry's wedding, which took place 3 years after his death. Before the wedding, Eric's mother insisted on a prenuptial agreement to protect her son from experiencing another shock like his previous divorce. At that time, Eric's business share was worth about $2.5 million. His mother presented the agreement as a precaution in case of divorce. According to the prenup, Curry could not claim Eric's money, and he could not claim hers. Eric arranged for Curry and partner Cody to be the beneficiaries on his life insurance policy. In the event of his death, Cody could use his portion of the insurance payout to buy out Eric's share of their business. After their wedding, Eric and Curry began their ideal life together. They bought their home, lived happily, and hoped to have children. Inspired by her successful brother who had made a fortune buying, renovating, and selling houses, Curry decided to follow the same path. With Eric's experience in the construction industry, Curry obtained her real estate broker's license and began selling real estate. Her friendly nature and attractive appearance quickly made her a well-known real estate broker in town, which made Eric proud. Eventually, Curry shared her brother's business model with Eric and they began working together. Curry identified profitable properties for resale, Eric managed the renovations, and they sold the homes. Their business flourished until a couple sued Curry for failing to disclose the true condition of a home. The lawsuit was settled out of court and did not affect their business. After 9 years of marriage, they have 3 sons, Weston, Carter, and Ashton. Despite his busy work schedule, Eric values family time, being actively involved in his sons' lives and supporting them in sports. Since 2020, things have been unusual in their relationship. While on vacation in Greece, Eric called younger sister Amy and said Curry had given him a drink that made him feel sick. He suspected she was trying to poison him and warned that if he suddenly died, Curry would be responsible. Although the family was concerned, they dismissed Eric's claims as paranoid because the couple seemed happy. After the vacation, Eric secretly changed his will in November 2020, leaving his business shares and assets to younger sister Katie without telling Curry. The couple continued to live together for another year and a half until early 2022. This time, the conflict was over Curry's desire to buy an unfinished mansion for $2 million, which she thought could be sold for $5 million after renovations. Eric is skeptical about the deal's profitability, causing tension between them. Curry accuses Eric of controlling her business, while he believes the investment is too risky. Around this time, Cody, Eric's business partner, was notified by the insurance company that Curry had tried to change the beneficiary on Eric's life insurance policy to her name. Although she was unsuccessful, this raised serious concerns about her intentions. Eric started considering divorce, knowing that Curry would lose everything due to their marriage contract. Eric had already transferred his share to younger sister and removed Curry's name from all documents, including the insurance policy. Meanwhile, Curry spent $1,000 on powerful and dangerous painkillers. On Valentine's Day 2022, Eric told Cody that after eating a sandwich Curry made, he suffered severe respiratory irritation, similar to an earlier incident in Greece. Despite his suspicions, Eric did not leave Curry's side or stop eating her food. Eric continued to be suspicious of Curry, especially after he refused to buy the mansion. On the night of March 4th, Eric, 39, was found dead in his bed. The night before, Curry had made Eric a Moscow Mule over dinner. After he finished drinking it, they went to bed. During the night, Curry woke up to comfort one of their sons, who had been having a nightmare. When she returned to the bedroom around 3 a.m., she found Eric cold and unresponsive. She called 911, saying that Eric had no signs of life and that her attempts to resuscitate him had failed. Paramedics confirmed Eric's death, and Curry mentioned that she had attempted CPR on him, but doctors doubted her story. The man was bleeding from his mouth, but his wife had no blood on her. His death appeared to be due to a drug overdose, as tests showed his blood levels were 5 times higher than the lethal dose. When Curry was asked why he was taking such a strong drug, she said she didn't know. Eric's family denied that he had any health problems that would warrant such medication. A review of his medical history revealed that he had not seen a doctor in a long time and that no one had prescribed him this hard-to-get prescription drug. Eric had no history of drug addiction or convictions and was otherwise healthy. Just one day after Eric's death, a dispute broke out between Curry and Katie. Curry discovers that all of her husband's businesses and assets are legally Katie's, leaving Curry with nothing. This revelation caused Curry to become aggressive, and she attacked Katie, leading to the police being called. Unwilling to back down, Curry filed a lawsuit, claiming that the prenuptial agreement had been violated. She argued that her name could not be removed from the will and insurance policy without her consent. Curry asked for her rightful share and $300,000 in attorney's fees. In response, Katie took legal action against Curry, suspecting foul play in her brother's death and accusing Curry of poisoning her brother for financial gain. Police began investigating Eric's death and suspected it was not an accident. Curry was the prime suspect. During the investigation, police requested access to Curry's cell phone. They discovered that messages with Neil, the salesman, had been deleted, but police were able to recover them. Curry said her husband's death was a huge loss for her, and was especially difficult for Eric's 3 sons, as he was very important to them. Curry played the role of a grieving, mourning widow to avoid suspicion. Police continued working on the case and found another inconsistency in Curry's testimony. According to her story, she went to her son's room at night without her phone, leaving it charging on the nightstand beside her bed. However, records showed that she was actively using the phone at that time, messaging various people. It was even determined that the phone was in motion, indicating she was walking around the house with it. This information did not match her story. The police questioned Neil, the person who sold the medicine and supplied her with the medicine. He confessed everything. He revealed that she had been experimenting with different drugs, claiming that none of them helped with her severe back pain. Little did Neil know that the drugs had an entirely different purpose. In exchange for testifying against Curry, Neil was not charged. During the investigation, it was discovered that Curry had repeatedly taken out life insurance policies on her husband. Immediately after his death, she contacted the insurance company and received $100,000. The day after her husband died, she hired a locksmith to open his safe and took about $150,000 from it. With Eric gone, there was no one to fund Curry projects, and she was also burdened with significant debts at the time of his death. She owed $190,000 in taxes, $1,847,000 to creditors for a mansion purchase, and another $514,000. Curry then wrote a book called You're With Me with her sons. She wanted a book to help her children cope with the loss of a loved one. So she decided to write it herself. After the book was completed, Curry began appearing on various shows to talk about her book. She said that the death of her husband, Eric, was a shock, and she dedicated the book to him and her children. Sales of the book skyrocketed, becoming widely popular within a few weeks. Many mothers bought it to help their children cope with the loss of a loved one. The book's plot was particularly intriguing. In the story, the husband dies from a brain aneurysm. For the Curry, it was a means to secure financial stability since she was in financial ruin. In the book, Curry seems to imply that she did something to her husband, which seems suspicious. Despite everything, Curry profited from her husband's death, benefiting from insurance payouts and earnings from selling a book. She exploited her children's grief for monetary gain. There were also suspicions that Curry might have killed her husband. Rumors suggested that Curry had an affair during her marriage and wanted to be with this man without losing the affluent lifestyle her husband Eric provided. Divorce would have been financially disadvantageous for Curry, so she allegedly killed her husband to get his money. Another motive was Eric's refusal to finance the purchase of a house. 6 months after her husband Eric died, Curry's family noticed that she was preparing a Pinterest folder with wedding ideas. This confused everyone, since all of her friends and relatives were married and no one was planning a wedding, leading to speculation that Curry might be preparing for her wedding to her lover. On May 8, 2023, 2 months after actively promoting her book, 33-year-old Curry Richens was arrested on charges of first-degree murder with aggravated circumstances. She was also charged with possession of a large amount of a controlled substance. The investigation into her husband Eric's death on May 4, 2022, lasted more than a year. Curry is currently being held without bail pending trial. Curry's neighbors and many family members were shocked and could not believe that she had caused her husband's death. Curry Richens gave numerous interviews, presenting herself as a grieving widow who, even a year after her husband's death, had not yet come to terms with the loss. This strategy helped her gain sympathy from television viewers. The interview was broadcast nationwide, causing a significant public response. Curry received significant support and increased sales of her book. She attempted to defend herself by blaming her late husband for past problems with illegal substances, but this claim has never been verified. The couple's 3 children now live with Eric's family, and temporary custody is with Eric's younger sister, Katie. Curry's book could ultimately be crucial for prosecutors in painting Eric Richen's death as a calculated murder with an elaborate cover-up. The judge has scheduled a pre-trial conference for September 23 for the prosecution and defense to discuss jury selection. A trial date has not yet been set. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Julia Niswinder. Julia Niswinder was born in 1989 in the small town of Monroe, which has a population of 20,000. She has a twin sister named Jennifer. The girls were raised by their grandparents while their mother was building her personal life. Kim had given birth to them at 15, claiming she was raped at 14 by a guy she barely knew. However, relatives say he was someone familiar and close to the family. Regardless, he avoided taking responsibility. After discovering her pregnancy, Kim decided she wasn't ready to be a mother and entrusted her daughters to her parents. The grandparents became their official guardians and raised them as their own children. When the children grew up, their mother remarried Jim, who worked in the cleaning business, and they had another daughter. By then, Jennifer was already attending school and living with her mother. While Julia spent a lot of time with her grandparents on her mother's side. In high school, things changed. According to her mother, Julia became defiant and uncontrollable, often arguing with her twin sister, Jennifer. Eventually, their mother grew tired of the constant fights between the daughters. Their house was small, with only 2 bedrooms and a living room, so she couldn't give the older daughters separate rooms. As a result, she decided to send Julia to live with her grandparents again. Julia was happy to return to grandparents. She lived there for a while, and her grandparents indulged her and were very affectionate toward her. At that time, Julia became very concerned about her appearance and tried to lose weight. She followed strict diets, restricted herself in almost everything, and ate very little. Her grandma was worried about her, but Julia assured her that she was fine. At 19 years old, Julia needed to make her own life decisions. She enrolled at Eastern Michigan University in the journalism faculty and continued living with her grandmother. Julia dreamed of becoming a TV presenter. She became close to Jennifer and her mother but did not want to return home. The 2 sisters became closer, sharing secrets, experiences and events in their lives. Julia later moved to a room on the campus of a university in the small town of Salanta, Michigan. She was fortunate to get a room with a bathroom. Julia also got a job with her mother at Ulmert. Her new place was a 45-minute drive from her mother's house. Her neighbors were girls she got along with well. On Thursday, December 6, 2012, with Christmas and the holidays approaching, Julia's neighbors left for the weekend to visit their families. Julia visited her mother's family. They had already set up a Christmas tree and began decorating it and the house together. They all enjoyed hot chocolate and listened to Christmas songs, creating a festive atmosphere and having a wonderful time together. On Friday, December 7th, she visited her mother's workplace and they went shopping for presents together. Julia and her mother then went home together, and an argument broke out that turned into a fight. The exact details of the incident remain unclear. Julia left the house in distress, drove to her grandmother's house, and expressed that she never wanted to return to that house again. Her grandmother comforted her, invited her to stay, and together they decorated the Christmas tree and the house. Julia's mother later visited her grandparents and reassured Julia that she had misunderstood the situation. Julia's grandmother listened to both sides and sensed that something was wrong. When her mother left, Julia stayed with her grandmother. The next day, December 8th, Julia went to work. She saw her mother there but did not speak to her. As they passed each other, Julia's mother told her that she loved her. After her shift, Julia went home. During her lunch break, she met her sister Jennifer at a coffee shop and mentioned her plans for the evening, saying that she was going to meet a guy after work. But she kept the details a secret. Julia was very private about her personal life, so it was not surprising that Julia kept the information secret with Jennifer. After meeting with Jennifer, she rushed to the car without putting on her coat, despite the cold weather. The last time Jennifer spoke to Julia was around 11 p.m. when Julia returned home from her date. Their conversation was brief. Julia simply said, "I'm home," before hanging up. Julia was very tired and she needed to study for an exam the next day, December 9th. After working at Walmart, she went shopping and then returned home. That night, she ran into a neighbor returned from visiting her family. The neighbor was getting ready to sleep at her boyfriend's house. Julia closed the bedroom door and was about to go to sleep. While the neighbor was getting ready, she heard the TV playing loudly in Julia's room. This made her feel strange because she had never seen Julia watching TV before, especially when it was time to go to bed. However, the neighbor was in a hurry to meet her boyfriend, so she didn't investigate further and left the house. On Monday morning, December 10th, 2012, a neighbor returned from a family visit. She quickly showered to go to school. While getting ready, she noticed that Julia's alarm clock kept ringing, but no one seemed to have turned it off. Knowing that Julia often struggled to wake up in the morning, the neighbor was not surprised. She knocked on Julia's door to try to wake her up, but received no response. After a while, she decided not to bother her anymore and went to school. That day, Julia did not go to class and also missed an important exam, which was unusual for her, as she had never been absent or late for an exam before. Julia missed her shift at her stepfather's cleaning company, where she had taken a part-time job to earn money before the holidays. Although she was scheduled to work, she did not show up. She also missed her shift at Walmart that evening, which raised concerns among her coworkers. The next day, December 11th, Julia missed her shift for the second time. Her coworkers grew increasingly concerned and tried to reach her by phone, but no one answered. An employee had Julia's mother's phone number and called her that evening to inform her that Julia had missed 2 shifts. Julia's mother, Kim, was at a cafe playing darts with Jennifer and other relatives at the time. She noted that their schedules often didn't align, and it was common for them to go 2 or 3 days without seeing or calling each other. When Kim learned that Julia was missing and not responding to calls, she panicked and tried to reach her daughter repeatedly, but all her calls went to voicemail. Concerned, Kim called Julia's friend Rachel and asked her to check on Julia. Rachel agreed and went to Julia's house around 9 p.m. Rachel found Julia's car parked in the driveway next to the house, but no one answered the door or the phone. Concerned, Rachel sought out a security guard for assistance. She asked the guard to open Julia's room to check, but he refused and instead called the police. The guard could not find a spare key to Julia's room. When the police arrived, they broke down the door and entered the apartment. Inside the bedroom, everything was in disarray, furniture was scattered on the floor. And Julia's handbag was on the bed, making it look like a robbery had taken place. As the police continued their search of the apartment, they made a dreadful discovery. They found the body of the Julia face down in the bathtub. Her body was fully submerged, and her hands were behind her back with her feet together. There were signs of restraint on her wrists and ankles. A phone was also found underwater beneath her body. Julia's torn clothes were on the bathroom floor, and it was evident that the fabric had been cut with a knife. After examining her, the police concluded that her body had likely been in the water for 2 days and was in a state of advanced decomposition. The knife and rope used to tie up Julia were not found anywhere in the apartment. All of Julia's valuables, including her wallet with cash, laptop, and car keys, were still on the table, and the wrapped Christmas presents were untouched. The only items missing were the pillowcase and the keys to Julia's room, which led investigators to rule out the possibility of a robbery. Rachel learned the tragic news from the police and immediately informed Julia's mother about her daughter's death. Kim and Jennifer quickly got into their car and drove to Julia's apartment. Despite the police cordon, the mother and sister approached the building to find out what had happened. They tried to enter the room but were stopped by the police. The family demanded answers about Julia, but no one would give them any information. They were distraught and pressed the police for information, but the police only confirmed that Julia was dead. Police took Julia's family to the station along with her neighbors for questioning. Julia's neighbors said they generally got along with her, although they had had a conflict in the past. They had resolved their differences and had not had any problems since. The neighbors said they were not home when the murder occurred and provided a confirmed alibi, clearing them of any suspicion. Forensic experts examined the crime scene and found no signs of forced entry. All windows and doors were locked. Julia's room was on the first floor, leading police to speculate that she may have opened the door herself and that the attacker was likely someone she knew. At the crime scene, police discovered bloody rubber gloves, male biological fluids, and 3 DNA samples on the gloves. The evidence was analyzed, revealing that one DNA sample belonged to Julia, while the other 2 came from an unidentified male. One of the samples was too decomposed to be identifiable, and there was no record of the second male DNA sample in the police database. Notably, the biological fluids belonged to a man who had had a vasectomy, suggesting that he was not a father. This led police to conclude that the suspect was likely an older man rather than a younger one, as vasectomies are not typically performed at a young age. As a result, police focused their search on adult men who knew Julia. An autopsy revealed that Julia died from strangulation. She had been strangled before being thrown into the water. The potential suspect had turned up the volume on the television on the day of the crime to drown out any screams she may have made during the struggle. A toxicology report confirmed that there were no traces of alcohol or illegal drugs in her system. While the police continued their investigation, Julia's family decided to conduct their own investigation to find out the truth. They posted leaflets and appealed to the public for help through the media and social networks. But these efforts did not help their investigation. Police discovered that the girl had been dating a young man shortly before the murder. Police checked Julia's phone and identified the man, taking him in for questioning. However, he was soon released, as he had a solid alibi that cleared him of suspicion. Police found Julia's stepfather, Jim, suspicious, as he appeared unusually calm and did not seem to be grieving over Julia's death. He was familiar with her house and could have easily gained access to the apartment, as Julia may have let him in herself. People who knew him described him as strange, reclusive, and unsociable. Everyone kept their distance from Jim, especially after the Jim had a vasectomy following the birth of his daughter with Kim. This made him the primary suspect in the investigation. When Julia's mother, Kim, and her sister Jennifer found out about the suspicions surrounding Jim, they strongly defended him, believing he was innocent. Kim argued that she had trouble sleeping at night and frequently got up to use the bathroom due to health issues. She insisted that she would have noticed if Jim had left the bed that night, but he stayed with her the entire time. Kim rejected all allegations against Jim, explaining that she had previously been a victim of violence. She stated that if she had sensed any danger from Jim, she would never have allowed him near her daughters. Julia's grandparents were very concerned about her and decided to speak up. They informed the police about a fight that occurred at Julia's parents' house a few days before the tragedy. Although Julia didn't provide details about the conflict, she did say she would never return to that house. This raised questions about whether she had discovered something troubling or if there was another reason that led Jim to want to eliminate her. The grandparents noted that Kim and Jim's marriage was on the brink of divorce, as they frequently argued, and Kim had expressed that Jim might leave her. They hadn't shared a bedroom for a long time, making it difficult for Kim to know if Jim was home that night. This could explain Kim's intense protectiveness of her husband. She might have been trying to save their marriage or covering for him. In the early days after the incident, the police prevented Julia's mother and stepfather from entering her room where the crime took place, as they were collecting evidence and information. Despite this, Kim and Jim attempted to gain access to the room and were eventually successful, although Kim later said she did not remember how they got in. The police were surprised because they had not been granted permission to enter the room. Once inside, her parents immediately began unpacking and cleaning the room. First, they dumped a large bag of trash in the bathroom. After the cleanup, much of the original crime scene became untraceable. Additionally, Julia's car, which she had saved up to buy and was still paying for, was quickly sold by her parents, on the grounds that they could no longer afford the loan. This raised significant suspicions. The FBI eventually got involved. Forensic experts concluded that Jim was the prime suspect. Julia's maternal grandfather, James, noticed that Jim had a very strict parenting style, often making her cry and cornering her. James suspected that Jim might be punishing his daughter harshly behind closed doors. It was also revealed that Jim had been a karate instructor and the children had reported their mother for his brutal treatment. Jim had trained his daughter rigorously, helping her achieve a black belt in karate. The police asked Jim to provide a DNA sample, which he readily provided to clear his name. However, his DNA did not match that of the second man found on the glove. As time passed, the investigation stalled, and the case seemed to have been forgotten by everyone except the grandparents. They regularly asked the police for any updates and expressed their frustration at the lack of progress. Julia's grandparents still believed that the police should thoroughly investigate Jim, her stepfather. James suspected that Jim may have taken latex gloves from a cleaner at work to frame someone else while concealing his own involvement. However, this theory was never pursued further. It left many unanswered questions, such as whose DNA was on the damaged glove. It raised the possibility that there could have been two criminals involved. They asked Jim to take a lie detector test, which he passed twice, but Julia's grandfather remained skeptical. He still believed that Jim was somehow involved in Julia's murder. James' persistent attempts to communicate with the police about the investigation led them to stop contacting him. This decision upset only Julia's mother. Living in Florida, James was unable to visit the police in person, which resulted in him losing access to important information and feeling powerless. His daughter Kim and granddaughters, Jennifer and Madison, wrote to James to say he was no longer part of their family, which hurt him deeply. One of Julia's friends informed the police that Julia had reported harassment from her stepfather, who referred to Julia as his girlfriend, causing her fear. This suggested a possible sexual motive for the murder, prompting the police to seek a search warrant for Jim's home. During the search of his laptop, they discovered numerous explicit photos of minors. Jim was arrested due to these photos. At first, he claimed he was innocent, insisting that he did not know where the photos came from and that he was being framed. Later, he conceded that the photos might belong to him but insisted he was unaware that the subjects were minors. He maintained his innocence and was found not guilty because the prosecution failed to prove that the photos showed minors. Later, Julia's friend withdrew her accusations against her stepfather, although police informed her that her previous statements had been recorded. James discovered that Kim and Jennifer spoke to this friend and likely pressured her to change her testimony. Despite everything, Kim continues to support her husband and believes in his innocence. She thinks that her neighbor is responsible for her daughter's death due to a disagreement. However, this theory is not taken seriously because the neighbor has an alibi and only male DNA was found at the crime scene. 3 years after Julia's murder, in 2015, Kim and Jim's attorney advised them not to give a written statement because it could be used against them in court. James was even more angry when he heard this. He felt that if they had nothing to hide, they would not have hired an attorney or refused to give a written statement, because giving false testimony could have legal consequences. By insisting on giving a statement, they avoided potential liability. It was later discovered that the police had overlooked a crucial piece of evidence. It was the bathtub rug that might contain the criminal's DNA. This information emerged when new police took over the case. They reviewed all the documents and paid special attention to this rug. However, the police could not find it. Julia's mother allowed them to search among Julia's belongings, which she had taken from Julia's room and stored in a storage room, but the rug was not among them. Its disappearance is a mystery. Only Julia's family had access to the storage facility. Julia's grandfather suspected that her mother and stepfather had thrown the rug away while cleaning the bathroom, along with the trash. The stepfather's mother and Julia's twin sister both insist that there was no argument in their home a few days before Julia's murder. They described the gathering as warm and friendly, with no disagreements. The James is determined to seek justice for Julia. He has thoroughly researched DNA and discovered that technology has made significant advancements in the past decade, allowing for the analysis of damaged or weak DNA samples. He is puzzled by the police's disregard for his requests and suggestions, as they appear reluctant to pursue the case. Julia's mother, Kim, has divorced Jim, but they remain on good terms and maintain communication. She continues to support Jim's innocence and views him as the decent person. As a result, there have been no arrests in the case, and the perpetrator remains unpunished. Hello again, true crime fans. We've got another mysterious case to explore. The case of David Nixon. David Nixon was a friendly, ambitious, and optimistic man living in Grapevine, Texas. He had a talent for selling and was involved in trade. David married Donna Lella in 1990. The following year, they welcomed their son. He then ventured into real estate, which proved to be a successful field for him. Over time, he became one of the top agents in the city, handling million-dollar transactions. David's marriage ended in 1995 when he began an affair with flight attendant Lisa Hill. After the divorce, he stayed on friendly terms with his first wife, mainly because of their shared son, Nicholas. David then married another woman, but that marriage lasted only 2 years. He didn't remain single for long. Before his divorce from Lisa was finalized, he met a 27-year-old woman who initially overlooked his advances. Eventually, they decided to move into David's house together, which could signify his third marriage. David was known to his relatives for his love of fine and luxurious things, often owning more than his income could afford. 11-year-old Nicholas admired his father, believing David to be a wonderful man who was always willing to help the family. David was at the peak of his life when he suddenly became the victim of a horrific massacre. On the evening of April 18, 2002, a passing motorist discovered a fire and reported it to the fire department. After extinguishing the fire, the firefighters discovered a human body. They quickly called the police. In the middle of the night, a police investigator arrived at the scene of a fire at David Nixon's home in Grand Prairie, Texas. David had recently moved to the area. As the officer stepped out of his car onto the front driveway, he was hit by the horrible smell of burning flesh. He found a body wrapped in a partially burned sheet. Further investigation revealed it was an electric blanket, along with a sturdy camping tarp and rope that held everything together. When police examined the body, they found it was too charred to tell whether it was a man or a woman. However, they were able to determine that the deceased had fair skin based on the remaining facial features. It took several hours to carefully remove the body from the scene of the fire. During their investigation, they discovered several fibrous materials that could have been used to start the fire. These materials were later identified as electric blankets. Unfortunately, they did not find any other significant evidence to identify the suspect. A forensic expert analyzed the case and concluded that the victim was a man in his 40s who was murdered by a single gunshot to the heart before a fire broke out. There were no signs of a struggle, suggesting that the victim was caught off guard, possibly while sleeping. The initial autopsy could not identify the victim, but police believed he was the homeowner. To confirm his identity, they needed dental records and documents, which ultimately revealed that he was David Nixon, a 40-year-old. The event was a devastating loss for the deceased's family, especially for his son Nicholas. On that day, Nicholas was supposed to call his father but couldn't reach him. The Nicholas sensed that something was wrong but had no idea that his father was already dead. From the beginning, police suspected that Tracy, David's third wife, might be the killer. Friends of the couple noted that while they generally got along, they also had serious arguments, often over finances and David's gambling debts. As Tracy's tumultuous relationship with David progressed, she discovered that he was wasting money on gambling. Their arguments became more heated in the early spring of 2002. After nearly 4 years together, they decided to separate. However, a serious tax lawsuit ensued. To protect his assets and avoid losing his home, David transferred ownership of the house to Tracy. When it came time to discuss separation, Tracy insisted on keeping David's luxurious home, which had a hidden terrace and a heated pool. David tried to negotiate with her to get his property back, but she refused to agree. In April, things escalated when David reported to the police that Tracy had changed the locks on his house without his permission. She took advantage of his absence while he was away for a work-related trip to a nearby city. That evening, the police intervened to help resolve the situation. She argued that she had invested her own money in renovating the house and wanted to keep it. However, she could not provide evidence of her financial investment, and they were unable to reach an agreement. Nearly 2 weeks later, David was found murdered. This raised suspicions, especially since he had no known conflicts with anyone else, making it plausible that Tracy may have been involved in his death to retain ownership of the house. That evening, upon hearing about David's ex-husband's death, Donna went to the police station. Donna reported that David had recently expressed concerns for his safety due to Tracy's erratic behavior. She also provided the police with David's will, which he had asked her to share, naming a potential culprit if anything ever happened to him. Despite this, David had never reported any domestic violence incidents to the police and often minimized his problems. Donna understood the risks David faced during their property division, as he consistently sought to resolve conflicts peacefully. However, it seemed that Tracy was provoking new conflicts. Donna called the police to her ex-husband's home when her son could not reach his father. Donna had previously contacted Tracy to find out what might have happened, but Tracy dismissed her concerns. Tracy said she had not been keeping tabs on David, whom she had broken up with, and suggested he might be drinking or gambling. The couple had been living together in a house in Grapevine that was the subject of a dispute. They had recently agreed that the man would be moving out to a new place in Grand Prairie just a few days before his death. Tracy later confessed that they had talked about the move, and David had asked her to rent a van to help with transporting their belongings. She did not leave him in a tough spot. Instead, she called a car service and rented a special cart to load items into the van. David packed his things and went to the new address, planning to return for the rest of his belongings. However, he never came back. The disagreements that occurred created a strong motive for the crime. From the beginning, the police were interested in Tracy. They considered her a prime suspect in the case. When the police informed Tracy of the news that David had been murdered, the police expected her to be distraught and in need of comfort after the loss of a loved one. However, her reaction was unexpected. She was indifferent, uncaring, and showed no signs of distress. From that moment on, the police began to confirm their suspicions. Tracy revealed that she and David had had a serious disagreement in the months before David's death. With tears in her eyes, she shared that just before these events, she had lost her child, which made the situation worse. Last fall, Tracy discovered she was pregnant, which coincided with the decline of their relationship. In addition, she was dealing with health issues that contributed to her emotional struggles. Realizing that it was not the right time to have a child, she chose to terminate the pregnancy. Despite her decision, she still held David responsible for the loss of the child. It's important that police found no evidence of Tracy's pregnancy, as there was no documentation to support her claims. Everything was based solely on her statements. During the first interrogation, police closely observed the Tracy, and afterward, every officer was convinced that she was not telling the truth. They noted that she gave evasive answers, appeared confused in her testimony, and her body language often suggested she was lying. The woman insisted that she was not involved in the murder and was unaware of the details surrounding it. Since Tracy refused to admit anything, the police had no evidence to confront her with. Tracy was later released from custody. Extensive searches were conducted at the scene of the massacre and in the sewer. However, much of the evidence was washed away by the fire department's efforts to extinguish the fire. Key clues included tire tracks that matched the tire tracks of the truck Tracy had rented for David's move. Small fibers of fabric similar to those used to wrap the body were also found in the sewer. It appeared that the killer had attempted to dump the body in the sewer but was unsuccessful. Although most witnesses described Tracy in a negative light, this information was not enough to make an arrest or charge. Police began reviewing surveillance camera footage near David's home. That same day, they captured footage of a young woman who closely resembled Tracy near a store not far from the residence. Although the footage was limited, it helped police reconstruct the events. After reviewing dozens of hours of video, they identified a distinctive yellow truck that had stopped near the murder scene. The tire tracks from the truck matched those found at the crime scene. They then followed the truck to a nearby driveway. Additionally, 3 days after David's murder, they spotted a white Lexus, similar to Tracy's, driving in the area. The same woman was recorded walking past the store entrance. She made a purchase and left, and store employees reported that she had purchased a large amount of cleaning products, which raised suspicion. Police recognized Tracy and began communicating with her more frequently. Despite this, she maintained that she had nothing to do with the murder and claimed that the recordings the police found were fabricated to frame her and speed up the case. Tracy gave an alibi, saying she was at her parents' house in Arlington during the time. However, police were unable to find any witnesses to confirm her whereabouts because her relatives were away. Needing more evidence to prosecute, police searched Tracy's home. They believed Tracy killed David while he was sleeping by shooting him in the heart. Forensic experts believe David may not have had time to react while he was asleep. After David's death, Tracy immediately purchased a new mattress. A shopping list from a hardware store indicated that Tracy may have been involved in the events surrounding David's death. Donna believed that the only motive for the murder was the house itself. Tracy argued that David's death would not have benefited her financially and that she deserved to inherit his house. She claimed that there was no insurance policy in David's name that would have made her the beneficiary. Since they were not legally married, she could not claim any other assets. The motive for the crime is believed to have been both money and revenge for the breakdown of her relationship. After the murder, Tracy is said to have used a yellow styrofoam truck to transport David's body. It is suspected that she planned this from the beginning to divert the investigation. Using the truck, she moved the body by loading it onto a trolley secured with straps. Tracy then took the body to the construction site of a new home. Evidence, including fabric fibers, suggests that she attempted to dispose of David's body by throwing it into the sewer at the construction site, but was unsuccessful. She left the body on the ground and returned 2 days later to carry out her plan. During this time, she was recorded on surveillance cameras several times. She then planned to dispose of the body by cremation. Tracy wanted David to be completely burned, so she wrapped his body in several layers of electric blankets. Unfortunately for her, a passerby discovered the fire and alerted the fire department. Had her plan succeeded and gone undetected, she could have disposed of the body by throwing it into a storm drain. However, fate intervened and she was unable to carry out her plan. The next day, after returning to the police station a second time, Tracy was arrested and charged with the murder of David Nixon. During a preliminary hearing, the judge granted her bail but required her to wear an electronic monitoring device until the murder trial began. Despite her guilt, Tracy had many supporters, including Roland Taylor. Roland, a local dentist and neighbor of the couple, was originally from the United Kingdom but had settled in Texas. He and Tracy had been friends for a long time. Although he had heard many accusations against her, he was convinced that Tracy was the opposite of what people claimed. He believed that David's gambling debts had created many enemies who might want to harm him. He had spent a large amount of money at the casino, which suggested that police should consider other suspects with stronger motives. After investigation, it was discovered that David had no debts. Although he occasionally borrowed money and lost money at the casino, he always paid back the money to his creditors. This made that theory absurd. Roland and Tracy then had a romantic relationship after she was released on bail, which led to their engagement. He was determined to fight for justice and freedom for the woman he loved. He helped her find a competent lawyer. And in 2005, Tracy hired a criminal defense attorney who, although experienced, had only handled 3 murder cases. However, he believed that the evidence against Tracy was completely circumstantial and believed that he could successfully secure her acquittal. The defense argued that she had been arrested within the first 36 hours of the investigation, too early to thoroughly consider all potential suspects and properly assess her possible involvement. Typically, an arrest would occur when there is clear evidence, such as a criminal caught in the act with a weapon. However, this was not her case. Investigations generally take longer to effectively identify and narrow down suspects. The defense viewed the police actions as an attempt to quickly close the case by blaming the first person they encountered. Additionally, he argued that the prosecutor's office lacked direct evidence linking her to the murder, as no DNA or fingerprints of Tracy were found in the house or truck, nor was the alleged murder weapon. A gun discovered. The prosecution relied on the testimony of several individuals who believed Tracy was guilty from the start due to her conflict with David. Their relationship was tumultuous. Shortly before his death, David had filed a restraining order against Tracy and stopped contacting her, even though they lived in the same home. Family members noted that David had tried to distance himself from his ex-wife. The attorney learned that the police had video footage of Tracy's interrogation and requested a copy. After reviewing the material, the defense attorney became convinced that the police used deceptive tactics to pressure Tracy into providing answers. The defense argued that the Supreme Court had intentionally portrayed Tracy in a negative light from the start. One of the prosecution's key pieces of evidence was video footage of Tracy abandoning her white Lexus, moving into a rental truck, and purchasing cleaning supplies at a store near where the body was discovered. By contacting the store clerk and obtaining a receipt from the woman in the video, it was discovered that she had used a discount card. The card was registered to Tracy, saving her 19 cents on her purchase. Tracy claimed that she did not remember having the card and insisted that she would not have left such evidence behind if she were trying to move around the city undetected. Tracy believed that she had been set up. Police believed that the cleaning products found during the search of the house matched those from a local hardware store. The defense attorney has offered several theories to explain David Nixon's death. One theory is that he may have been the victim of a robbery, while another suggests that the attack may have been a targeted attack on a gambling broker over debt. The defense has also pointed to other potential suspects who seem more likely than Tracy. One of these suspects is Jerry, a longtime friend of David's. They had vacationed together at a lake house, and Jerry frequently visited their home, where he knew Tracy well. The woman suggested that Jerry may have borrowed money from David, which could have been a motive for the murder. The police decided to investigate Jerry, who quickly admitted that he understood Tracy's attempt to blame him. He was an easy target because he was a close friend of David's. Although he occasionally borrowed money from David, he denied any involvement in the case. According to Jerry, he sold his old car 2 months before the tragedy because he needed money. He asked David for a large sum of money, and David agreed to help him. However, after Christmas, Jerry paid David back all of the money. Jerry did mention that he and David had planned to have a drink that day. The last time he heard David's voice was early in the morning of the day David was murdered. On the morning of David's murder, Jerry and David spoke on the phone and made plans to meet. However, David never showed up and stopped answering his phone. It was only later that Jerry discovered what really happened. Jerry claimed that he had not seen David that day and that since there was no debt between them, he had no reason to commit the crime. When this lead failed, Tracy pointed to another potential suspect, David's first wife, Donna. Just 2 months before his death, David had purchased a $500,000 life insurance policy in New Mexico, naming their son as the primary beneficiary and Donna as the secondary beneficiary. Since the boy was too young at the time, Donna received the payout after David died. Tracy was not named on these policies, leading her to believe that Donna would benefit from David's death. After David's death, Donna received a small sum of about $10,000, which would help her support her son. She found it absurd to think that the money was a motive for the murder, noting that David would have paid her more in child support while he was alive. Meanwhile, Nicholas's son insisted that only Tracy could have harmed his father, as he had witnessed their violent arguments. Tracy's attorney argued that the prosecutor's office lacked solid evidence against her and that police had not thoroughly investigated other potential suspects since David's murder. Tracy and her attorney eventually went to trial, confident of their chances of winning because they had dismissed the prosecutor's allegations. However, the prosecution was convinced of Tracy's guilt, describing her as an unstable and aggressive. The motive behind the case centers on a house, which poses a serious threat because the David may contest the re-registration of the property in Tracy's name and reclaim it. The attorney repeatedly argued that the charges lacked forensic evidence. There were no witnesses and the murder weapon had not yet been found. The defense believed that the available evidence would not be sufficient to support the charges. Tracy believed that the case was a carefully orchestrated plot, asserting that she had been wrongly accused. She felt that the police had not investigated the case thoroughly. The prosecutor had important information from Nicholas, the David's son. Nicholas claimed that his father had kept the same pistol in a safe in the bedroom of the home David shared with Tracy. However, police were unable to find the weapon for ballistics testing. Nicholas believed that Tracy had opened the safe, used the gun, and then discarded it. Tracy, on the other hand, claimed that David had never kept a pistol in the home and that she had never seen one. However, she could not explain why she had purchased a new mattress so soon after David's death. It appeared that the old mattress had blood on it and had become a crime scene. The prosecution said that the store staff recognized Tracy and confirmed that she had purchased a large quantity of cleaning products that could be used to remove blood. They advised Tracy to use hydrochloric acid, but it was not available in stores, so they suggested she order it online. She also purchased other items, all of which were later found in Tracy's home during a search. The prosecutor's office believed that the evidence allowed them to piece together the events of the case. The defense attempted to suggest that Donna could be the likely killer due to her strong motive. However, Nicholas's mother only received $10,000, which was insufficient to consider a violent act. They also tried to implicate David's second wife, Lisa, in the murder. Police conducted a thorough analysis of potential involvement by Donna and Lisa, examining cell phone records and geolocation data. Ultimately, they found no connection to the crime. Additionally, both Donna and Lisa had a positive relationship with David, which was confirmed by numerous witnesses. They also had credible alibis, and Lisa had no motive whatsoever. By the end of the trial, Tracy's confidence had plummeted. She expressed her frustration by saying, "I don't believe in justice anymore. I don't know how I'm going to feel after this." The trial lasted 2 weeks, and the jury found Tracy guilty of murdering David Nixon. They reached a verdict in less than 4 hours, resulting in her being sentenced to 40 years in prison. The victim's family was completely satisfied with the outcome, and many felt relieved. Roland Taylor stayed loyal to his fiancée, insisting on her innocence and visiting her in prison. With his support, Tracy filed an appeal, but it was ultimately denied. She will be eligible for parole in 2024 when she turns 55. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Blagg family. Jennifer Blagg was born on January 8, 1967, in Oklahoma, USA. She grew up with her mother and one brother, and they were very close from a young age. Jennifer was creative, sociable, and enjoyed playing the piano and dancing. However, she faced a traumatic experience in childhood when, at the age of 12, she was raped by a family friend who was much older than her. This incident deeply affected her, and it took a long time for her to heal. Despite this, she eventually overcame her feelings of resentment, pain, and anger, graduated from high school, and went on to attend college. Her future husband, Michael, was born into a military family. They frequently moved due to his father's career as a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. Growing up in such an environment was challenging, but Michael was a calm and obedient child. Michael was hardworking and intelligent. He even participated in a program sponsored by the governor to study nuclear physics, for which he received an honorary diploma. He continued to pursue his studies in science thereafter. Michael achieved everything by his own labor, because nothing in life came to him easily. He later shared that during this time, he worked as a pizza delivery driver to cover his college expenses. At 21, he married his first wife, but after about a year of constant issues in their relationship, they decided to get a divorce. In 2008, Jennifer enrolled at San Diego State University to pursue a business degree. Meanwhile, Michael chose to follow his father's path and joined the Navy, where he became a decorated Gulf War veteran and helicopter pilot. After returning from a business trip, he had some free time to explore the city. He attended a party with mutual friends where he met Jennifer. They feel an attraction to each other, and Michael asked her out on a date, which she accepted. They went to the movies and afterward decided to start dating. In 1991, Michael and Jennifer got married and moved to the quiet town of Simpsonville in Southern California. They enjoyed the peaceful atmosphere and made many friends through their church. As a deeply religious couple, they seemed well prepared to start a family, even though Michael was often away serving in the Navy. 4 years later, they welcomed a daughter named Abby. After her birth, Michael left the military and secured a high-paying engineering job with a flexible schedule, allowing him to spend more time with his family. In his spare time, Michael began teaching Sunday school, which he considered important. However, due to Michael's job, they had to move several times, which was challenging for Jennifer. She often felt like just as she was settling into a new city and making new friends, her family had to move again. Despite her struggles, but when Michael proposed moving, Jennifer easily accepted because of her religious beliefs. Their final move occurred in 2001, when they decided to settle in Grand Junction, Colorado. It was a small, cozy town known as a winter resort, surrounded by mountains that attracted wealthy tourists. In Grand Junction, Michael took on an important role as an engineer for a company in that city. He also began teaching at the local Sunday school affiliated with the church. The family was very religious, and friends mentioned that they prayed about nearly every decision they made together. By 2001, Abby was 6 years old. She was getting ready for school and attended preparatory courses at a Christian school, where her mother, Jennifer, worked as a teacher's assistant. Abby was kind and helpful, assisting her parents with various household chores. She is also very religious, like her father and mother. On November 1, 2001, Michael called 911. The police were called and, upon arrival, they met Michael. According to Michael, he had just returned home from work and was immediately concerned when he saw the open door, because his family is always closed. As he entered the house, he didn't see anyone inside. In the bedroom, he discovered blood on bed, which dripped onto the floor. He also noticed that his wife's jewelry box was empty and that her handbag was on the floor, scattered with other belongings. Despite searching the entire house, he could not find his wife or daughter. Michael believed they were still alive and thought they might have been kidnapped, so he called for help. Based on the large amount of blood found, the police suspected that it was unlikely Jennifer and Abby were alive. They feared both may have been murdered. Since the Colorado River was nearby, the authorities considered the possibility that the bodies could have been disposed of in the river. They thoroughly searched the area, but found no signs of Jennifer and Abby. As the search operation expanded, volunteers and search teams joined forces to scour the surrounding region for any evidence related to Jennifer and Abby. Additionally, relatives of Jennifer traveled to the city to help with the search. While the search was ongoing, forensic experts examined the Blagg family home and collected various documents for analysis. They discovered significant amounts of blood on the bed and several fingerprints, which were sent to the lab for testing. Detectives also interviewed neighbors to piece together the timeline of incident from that day, but the neighbors did not see Jennifer and Abby. Michael was at work during the attack, a fact supported by CCTV footage and his colleagues' testimonies. He stated that he saw Jennifer and Abby alive early that morning, indicating that the attack likely occurred before he returned home from work. However, Michael was not excluded from the suspect list, as close family members are often scrutinized in such cases. However, it was crucial to verify the details carefully. The police interviewed Michael at the station, where he provided a thorough account of the incident from the previous day. He mentioned that around 7 p.m., Jennifer received a call from a friend who invited her to meet the following evening. After that, they watched TV and prepared for bed. By around 10 p.m., the entire family had gone to their rooms. Michael noted that early in the morning, when he woke up for work, Jennifer and Abby were still asleep. They were scheduled to get up around 6:30 to allow him to take Abby to her preparatory classes at school. After that, Jennifer returned home to take care of her daily tasks. Her husband Michael usually called her several times a day, but on that day, she didn't answer his calls. Assuming she might be busy, Michael didn't immediately worry. He then called her friend, assuming they decided to meet during the day, but the friend didn't know her whereabouts. Michael then continued with his day. He assumed she was at home, doing the laundry, cleaning, and cooking dinner. As soon as Michael returned home from work, he sensed that something was terribly wrong. There are two things that make him feel unusual. His daughter, Abby, didn't greet him as she usually did, and there was no smell of dinner cooking, which was unexpected since his wife Jennifer had planned to cook before meeting her friend. The scene became even more ominous when he spotted blood and immediately dialed the police. To preserve the crime scene, Michael went outside and waited for the police to arrive. The detectives then took over the investigation, and their inquiries led them to Abby's school. They discovered that she hadn't attended classes that day, which didn't surprise her teachers. Apparently, someone had called the class teacher the day before, claiming to be Abby's father and informing the school that she would be absent. The teacher wasn't suspicious at the time, but they did recall that a man, claiming to be Michael, had made the call. However, when questioned, Michael denied making the call, which only increased the suspicions about him. Further investigations revealed that Jennifer's friend from church, Melson, had noticed trouble in the Blagg family's relationship. Melson reported that Jennifer appeared to be extremely afraid of Michael. Jennifer only felt comfortable meeting in secret when Michael was not around. Jennifer had likely been forbidden by Michael from having visitors at their home. On one occasion, when Melson visited their house at length, Jennifer became anxious and hastily asked her to leave, probably to avoid Michael finding out that her had been to their house. The day before Jennifer's disappearance, Melson contacted Jennifer to invite her and Abby to visit. Notably, she specified that Michael, her husband, would not accompany them, which was unusual since the family typically traveled together. Melson agreed but thought the arrangement was peculiar. It was clear that Jennifer had recently argued with Michael and wanted space from him. Despite the plans, Jennifer never showed up the following morning. Later, investigators discovered voice messages from Michael to Jennifer, in which he sent her well wishes and affectionate greetings. However, authorities suspect that these messages may have been part of a setup, as it's possible that both Jennifer and Abby were already dead when the messages were sent. This thing raised suspicion about Michael's involvement, but he insisted on his innocence. He even gave interviews to journalists, expressing frustration that the police were focusing on him, and even they overlooking other suspects. Michael said he was deeply concerned about his wife and daughter's whereabouts and felt the real perpetrator was still at large. He has offered a $3,000 reward for any information that could help speed up the investigation. The detectives remained suspicious of Michael's behavior, so they decided to monitor him closely. During their investigation, they discovered blood on the bed, but strangely, very little was found on the surrounding walls. Normally, blood splatters and scatters in various directions, but in this case, that wasn't the case. DNA analysis revealed that the blood on the bed belonged to Jennifer. Additionally, when the detectives applied luminol to the family van, they found several hidden blood stains on the door and inside the vehicle, suggesting that it had been used to transport the victims, Abby and Jennifer. Michael reported to work on the day his wife and daughter disappeared. An investigation of the house revealed 55 fingerprints, many of which belonged to Michael. Notably, 17 fingerprints were unidentified, and 6 of those were small to potentially belong to young daughter, Abby. Despite this, Michael claimed that he had seen nothing unusual and pointed out that it was normal for family members' fingerprints to be present in the home. As the investigation continued, Michael relocated to a different house and didn't return to the original one, even after restrictions were lifted. He chose not to clean and no return to the house, stating that it was too painful for him. However, this decision ultimately worked in the police's favor as they were able to periodically examine the crime scene. In interviews with journalists, Michael portrayed the disappearance as resembling a robbery, citing the missing jewelry and money from the house. He also mentioned that there had been a string of burglaries in the area over the past year, suggesting that his family had simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time. According to Michael, the thieves may have broken in while his family was asleep, inadvertently targeting them. He suspected that the robbers were provoked by something when they entered his house. Even so, he held on to the hope that his wife and daughter were still alive. He often referenced Bible verses when communicating with the media, maintaining his innocence when questioned by the media and the police. However, detectives were convinced that the incident was not a robbery, as they found no signs of forced entry. They believed that the stolen items in the house were just a setup to distract the investigation. The police noted that robbers typically target empty homes to avoid confrontations and complications. If they encountered occupants, they wouldn't waste time and energy brutally killing them. Instead, they would opt for a quicker method. In the Blagg family home, a diary belonging to Jennifer was discovered. In it, she wrote about having a severe argument with Michael the day before her disappearance and fearing that he might harm her. Although she didn't elaborate on the details, she framed the situation in biblical terms. The detectives were unclear about the argument and approached Michael for clarification, but he maintained he had no memory of it. However, the police discovered a note addressed to him, apologizing for allowing negativity to creep back into their lives, suggesting relationship problems. When examining the Blagg family computer, the police were surprised to find thousands of hardcore pornography images. However, Michael denied any involvement in the images, he claiming that his wife was trying to spice up their lives. A further investigation showed that Michael and Jennifer's relationship had been troubled for a while. Michael had initially hired an escort out of curiosity, but over time he became hooked on the services. When investigators visited Michael's new house to question him, but no one opened the door, despite his car being parked outside. After hearing the sound of running water, they broke down the door and found Michael in the bathtub with cuts on his wrists that he had done to himself. In his hand, he was holding a photo of Abby and Jennifer, a Bible, and a note claiming he was not involved in their murders. Michael was rushed to the hospital, where he received medical treatment and survived. During the investigation, the sheriff's department received an anonymous tip about Michael's van being spotted near Ridge Park on the day Abby and Jennifer disappeared. This location was only a minute from them home. As a result, the police resumed their search, focusing on a 60-kilometers radius around them home. The new search lasted for 11 days, but failed to yield any results in the specified area. Subsequently, the police obtained new information. Michael was suspected of stealing an industrial item worth about $500 from his workplace shortly before Abby and Jennifer disappeared. Detectives called Michael in for questioning, suspecting he might be involved in the workplace incident. Michael broke down in tears, fearing he would be falsely accused of his family's murder, but he did not confess to the crime. Later, he explained that his emotional reaction was triggered by the fear of being wrongly accused of killing his family. A colleague of Michael contacted the police and provided crucial information. On the day Jennifer disappeared, Michael took out the trash at work, which was unusual since it was not part of his job. According to the colleague, they normally took turns doing this task. However, on that particular day, Michael insisted on doing it himself. He reacted aggressively when his colleague offered to help. It now seemed clear that Michael was trying to dispose of evidence. On June 5, 2002, the police discovered a woman's body that matched Jennifer's description. The body was wrapped in some type of cover and had holes in it, with a bullet still lodged in her head. It appeared that the killer had discarded her body in a landfill. Forensic experts confirmed through dental records that the murdered woman was indeed Jennifer. They determined that she died from a close-range gunshot wound to the head. Additionally, they also was established that she was killed while sleeping, as a retainer was found in her mouth, which she only wore at night. Unfortunately, the body had lain in the open for 7 months, and as a result, the remains were severely decomposed, providing limited information for the investigators. Investigators found that there were several garbage sites assigned to different companies. After digging at the location where the Jennifer's body was found, they confirmed that this particular area was managed by the company where Michael worked. The police, considering this coincidence to be more than accidental, they intensified their search for Abby's body at the dump but were unsuccessful. Further investigation revealed that Michael had left the city without warning, relocating to a different state. Although Abby's body was not found at the dump, the evidence was sufficient to charge Michael with the murder of Abby and Jennifer. The relatives of Jennifer were deeply upset by the manner in which her body was treated, and they strongly suspected Michael of disposing of Abby's bodies in a similar way. The detectives were unable to find anyone who knew the suspect Michael well enough to approach. However, they then discovered that his mother was still alive. Since she lived in Georgia, a state he often visited, the detectives decided to pay her a visit. Upon arriving at her house, they were met by a man. He was identified as Michael, who was subsequently arrested and transported back to Colorado to face charges of double first-degree murder. Following Michael's capture, the search teams decided to re-examine the landfill area. They regrouped and brought in volunteers to aid in the search. Over the course of 7 weeks, they searched through 7,000 tons of trash, but unfortunately, they never found Abby's body. The prosecutor's office suspected that Michael was living a double life. On the surface, the family appeared perfect, but in reality, Michael was manipulative and cruel. However, his first wife did not support these claims, stating that she had never experienced insults or physical abuse from him. In contrast, several witnesses reported that Michael's relationship with Jennifer was troubled from the start, with frequent arguments even before they got married. Michael and Jennifer's issues stemmed from Michael's love for partying and spending time with friends, while Jennifer wanted to build a strong family and asked him to stop going out. Eventually, Jennifer issued an ultimatum, and Michael chose to commit to her. They got married, and soon after, they had a child. During this time, Michael was still serving in the Navy, which often left Jennifer alone to cope with postpartum depression and care for their newborn daughter. Although she faced many difficulties, but Jennifer never complained. However, the relationship began to deteriorate due to domestic issues. After that, Michael found a job as an engineer, and things seemed to improve. He also started teaching at a Sunday school. However, his fellow teachers disagreed with his teaching methods and views on discussing topics like sex and abortion with teenagers. His liberal approach clashed with the conservative values of the Sunday school, leading to him having to quit his job there. Following this, the Blagg family traveled a bit more before settling in a new location to start fresh. This move resulted in big debt because their house in South Carolina took a long time to sell. Jennifer was initially unhappy in their new home and frequently called her friends, wishing to return. However, since Michael was earning a good income and managing to pay off their debts, she chose to stay with him during this challenging time. Before the violent incident occurred, there seemed to be a serious issue in the marriage. A local law firm employee reported that a few days before Jennifer's disappearance, she sought marriage and family counseling. Unfortunately, she was turned away because the lawyer was on vacation. Jennifer revealed that she had been a victim of Michael's violence and wanted to initiate a divorce. The firm intended to assist her as soon as they returned, but she vanished before they could meet again. Although police searched her house, car, and garage, they found no traces of her blood. However, it was suspected that Abby was likely murdered because she may have witnessed her mother's, Jennifer, murder. It was believed that she was probably strangled, which could explain why there were no blood traces found. The prosecutor's office decided to pause proceedings to gather information about the child Abby. Without a body, proving the murder would be extremely challenging. Michael was released on bail and allowed to stay with his mother within the city while awaiting the hearing. Michael claimed he could not have killed his family, stating he had no motive. He insisted that family relations were good and mentioned he had been preparing for Christmas by buying gifts worth over $5,000 for his loved ones. However, no one found his claims credible. The hearings were scheduled for March 2004. It was believed that Jennifer wanted to end her relationship with her husband, Michael, who did not agree and became angry. The prosecutor's office suspected that he killed both his wife and possibly their daughter during the night, then hid their bodies and went to work in the morning, trying to dispose of them with the trash. After his work shift, Michael returned home and called the police. Jennifer's mother testified for the prosecution. At first, she supported Michael, but her opinion changed when she saw the evidence. She claimed that Michael had been abusive to Jennifer for a long time, particularly when he was drinking. During those times, he would often attack and choke Jennifer, sometimes leaving her unconscious. After 12 hours of deliberation, the jury found Michael guilty of murdering Jennifer and sentenced him to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole on April 16, 2004. Although the trial concluded, but Michael's story did not end there. 10 years later, Michael had a chance to retry his case. Throughout the years, his lawyers searched for any possible ways to appeal. One major issue was that one of the jurors was blind, making it difficult for him to fully assess the evidence presented. Additionally, a female juror had intentionally provided false information on her questionnaire. She later confessed, explaining that her bias against Michael stemmed from her own experiences as a long-term victim of domestic violence. This affected her ability to objectively consider the details of the case, resulting in her vote against him. As a result, the verdict was overturned, and preparations for a new trial began. The lying juror was found guilty of contempt of court and received the 10-day prison sentence along with a $10,000 fine. In a surprising turn, the defense introduced a new suspect, a man named Philip Ruins, from Montana. He was linked to a series of brutal rapes, and both Jennifer and Abby were among his many victims. In November 2001, it was reported that he was in Colorado around the same time Abby and Jennifer went missing. Philip had a history of brutal crimes but had never faced punishment until now. In 201st, a new trial was held for him. This time, the prosecution called in an expert to analyze the crime scene. The expert suggested that the arrangement of objects in the house indicated a staged crime rather than a genuine robbery. He noted that the crime was executed clumsily and unprofessionally. According to his assessment, Jennifer was shot while she was asleep in her bed. The assailant then held her down until her heart stopped, after which he removed her body from the house and placed it in a van. Unfortunately, the expert could not provide any useful information about Abby due to a lack of evidence. Michael's family said he was heartbroken after his wife and daughter went missing. They all embraced and cried together, creating a deeply emotional scene. They found it hard to believe that he could be involved in his wife's murder. During the interrogation and trial, Michael remained quiet and composed, showing little emotion. The prosecutor interpreted his calm demeanor as a sign of guilt. However, Michael's lawyer argued that such behavior was typical for a conservative husband. Despite the lawyer's efforts, Michael was once again found guilty of murdering his wife and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Meanwhile, investigators were also looking into Philip. He was a convicted sexual predator serving 200 years for creating and distributing child pornography and for sexually abusing minors. Philip lured his young victims through his online forum. When police searched Philip's home, they discovered a list of victims' names that included Jennifer and Abby, with the date of the kidnapping coincides with the time of their disappearance. However, there is no physical evidence linking Philip to this crime. No fingerprints or DNA were found at the scene, and his handwriting did not match any evidence. Additionally, it is unclear how Jennifer's body ended up in the landfill, where trash from her husband's workplace was dumped. As a result, Investigators did not believe Philip was involved in the murder of Jennifer or the disappearance of Abby. However, the trial against Philip Ruins for various charges was difficult. Many of his victims experienced significant mental health problems due to the violence they endured. Some faced substance addiction, while others suffered from persistent nightmares. Unfortunately, there has been little advancement in the investigation into Abby's disappearance, as Philip has not admitted to the murders of either Jennifer or Abby. Abby's body has still not been located, and her fate remains unknown. She could possibly still be alive. A portrait of Abby has been created, and debates are ongoing about whether Michael is truly guilty of his wife's murder or if he was wrongfully convicted. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Tyler Edmonds. May 10, 2003. Joey missed the Air show, where Joey was expected to be present. The next day was Mother's Day, and he also ignored this important event. In the past, he had always made an effort to celebrate important occasions with his loved ones, so after these two incidents, his family began to worry that something was wrong. Joey's mother and sister went to his house, where they discovered a distressing scene. Joey was lying face down on his bed, with a large gunshot wound in the back of his head. They immediately called 911 to report the horrifying find. When police arrived, they began investigating the crime scene. Their first step was to interview Joey's mother and sister, who had found the body. Although they were understandably distressed, they answered questions calmly. They believed that Joey's wife, Christy, was the only person who might have harmed him. Given their troubled relationship, Christy was known to have affairs and had expressed a desire to be free of her husband, making her a prime suspect, especially since she was not at home at the time of the incident. The police also located a cross at Joey's mother's house in the nearby small town of Little Rock. Christy was questioned by the police but acted as if she had no idea what had happened. When they informed her of her husband's death, she began to cry and mourn him. The police did not find her behavior suspicious and continued to collect evidence. Then, concrete evidence against Christy emerged. Before any charges were filed against her, she arrived at the Stark Willie police station with her half-younger brother Tyler Edmonds. At the sheriff's office, Tyler expressed anger at her situation and wanted to protect her. Since Tyler was only 13 years old and could not confront Joey, a grown man, directly, Tyler came up with a plan. Tyler took a rifle and shot Joey in the back of the head while he was sleeping. Meanwhile, police questioned Tyler, without an adult or attorney present, a clear breach of protocol that would later affect the case. The boy's mother was alerted and rushed to the local police station. Tyler initially denied any involvement in the incident, but his story changed when his sister entered the room and gestured. He then repeated his sister's story, admitting that in the early hours of the morning, he and Christy had gone to the bedroom and pulled the trigger on a rifle, killing her husband. The mother was devastated when she heard the confession. She collapsed to her knees and cried. It was clear that the 13-year-old boy couldn't have committed the crime alone, as he simply lacked the strength to handle the weapon properly. The boy stated that he was unable to pull the trigger himself and needed his sister's assistance. Following the confession, the police began to view the boy as the main perpetrator and his sister as an accomplice. According to Tyler, he had given his sister the rifle beforehand. It was an old family .22 caliber gun that Christy had requested a few weeks before the incident. She was afraid of a large dog that frequently came into their yard and wanted to be armed for protection. Tyler did not want Christy or her children to be in danger, so he willingly gave her the gun. However, Tyler loved animals and begged Christy not to harm the dog. She eventually assured him that she would only shoot into the air if there was any danger, just to scare the pesky animal away. Before giving the gun to Christy, Tyler believed that the gun was broken because he and his friends had tried to fix it but failed. The old rifle had been gathering dust in the attic for years and was considered a family heirloom. The day before the incident, Tyler was picked up from school by his older sister, Christy. However, Christy was out with her new boyfriend and forgot to pick Tyler up. She then arrived a few hours late, picked Tyler up, and took him to her house. After returning home from school, Christy took Tyler to the backyard to test the rifle, and the rifle broke and failed to fire. Christy then put the broken gun in the trunk of her car. Police were convinced that something in Tyler's story did not fit and did not match his sister Christy's account. When asked by police how he held the gun and fired the shot, Tyler responded vaguely. Although he confessed, he was unable to describe the murder. A few days later, Tyler wrote a retraction. According to he pleaded guilty because he wanted to protect his half-older sister. He believed that he would not go to prison because of his age, so he was willing to accept responsibility for Joey's death. As a result, he was unwittingly held responsible for Christy's crimes and now faces life in prison. Tyler told a new story. He said that on May 10, 2003, he was getting ready for a trip with Christy to visit their father. The day before, he had slept over at his sister's house. That Saturday morning, Tyler woke up early to his sister's alarm clock to get ready for the trip. While waiting in the car with Christy's daughter, they sat together for about 5 minutes. As Tyler was adjusting the radio, he suddenly heard a loud bang coming from the house. He believed that the rifle was still in the trunk of the car, so he didn't think much of the noise he heard. Christy had a cat that often knocked things over and broke things, so he assumed that was the cause of the noise, especially since Christy was usually loud. A few minutes later, Christy left the house and got into the car, and Tyler thought they had left without incident. It was only on the way back that Christy revealed that she had shot Joey. Tyler was stunned. Christy cried and begged him to help her avoid the death penalty. So Tyler promised to take some responsibility, arguing that because he was young, he would not face severe punishment. Was Tyler really the one who killed his sister's husband? To answer this question, the police had to delve into the details of this family's life. Tyler and Christy went to the same school, but the girl was significantly older and graduated earlier. As a student, Tyler had always been a smart and hardworking child, sweet, kind and calm. In addition, he was a sociable boy, so he easily found a common language with his classmates and others. It seemed like he had a bright future. Tyler's mother, Sharon, raised Tyler on her own. His parents divorced when he was young due to his father's aggressive issues. Eventually, his mother ran out of patience and could no longer tolerate his behavior. Sharon filed for divorce, gaining full custody so as not to put Tyler in danger. Sharon prevented Tyler from communicating with his biological father, even when a social worker was present. Christy understood that Tyler wanted to see his father despite his mother's restrictions and a court ruling. Tyler still felt the connection to his father and wished to spend time with him. This led him to meet his father against his mother's wishes. One day, Christy asked Tyler if he wanted to spend the weekend at his father's house. Tyler was excited and agreed to the visit. At that time, Christy was married to her husband, Joey, and they had 3 children together. When Joey first met Christy, he was drawn to her beauty and strength, which made him overlook her flaws. Christy is quite manipulative and primarily focuses on her own needs, often ignoring Joey's feelings. She does not hide her affair from him, he is aware of it but chooses to ignore it. It seems that Christy desires a family mainly to satisfy her parents and meet societal expectations. At one point, Christy tried to persuade Tyler that she would be a better guardian for him than their mother, but Tyler resisted her attempts. He loved his mother deeply, and she had long suspected Christy's true motives. Christy often displayed manipulative behavior and had frequent outbursts of anger and aggression, often lashing out at family members over minor issues. These outbursts were impulsive and hard to control. Initially, her family thought her behavior was due to stress, but the reality was more serious. Christie's anger intensified, and she began blaming her caring husband, Joey, for her problems. Despite Christie's unpredictable behavior, Tyler's mother allowed him to continue spending time with her, believing that their close relationship was safe. Both individuals involved in the massacre were arrested and charged with murder, which, under Mississippi law, carries the death penalty. However, a judge decided to try Tyler Edmonds as an adult due to the serious nature of the crime. Despite this, because he was a minor, he could not receive a death sentence. Instead, it was anticipated that he would receive a sentence without the possibility of parole. Tyler Edmonds' trial began on July 20, 2004. This case garnered significant attention because the primary perpetrator of the brutal massacre was just a 13-year-old schoolboy. Tyler was defended by one of the state's best attorneys, who believed that Tyler's initial confession was a lie. The defense also believed that the confession was obtained under pressure from the police. The child admitted that he was frightened when he found himself being questioned, especially because he was initially questioned without his mother and attorney present, which was a violation. The only physical evidence in the case, apart from the bullet, included Christie's fingerprints found on the porch and motion sensors. The lights were turned off during the crime, likely to avoid alerting the neighbors. Christie's fingerprints were also the only ones found on the gun. The Tyler claimed he made the false confession to protect his older sister from the death penalty, believing that, because of his age, he wouldn't be punished for the crime. However, when he realized he could face serious consequences, he became scared and refused to support his sister. During the trial, the judge allowed the prosecution to present Tyler's confession in his own words. The jury watched a videotape of Tyler's confession. The jury deliberated for about 5 hours before reaching a decision. The defense believed that Tyler would be acquitted due to the weakness of the evidence against him. However, on July 24, 2004, 15-year-old Tyler Edmonds was convicted of the murder of Joey Fulgham and sentenced to life in prison. Following the verdict, the attorney quickly filed an appeal and continued to seek justice for Tyler by pushing for a review of his case. Investigations uncovered numerous errors in the handling of the case, and the investigation relied heavily on circumstantial evidence. The key piece of evidence was Tyler's own confession, but the defense argued that this confession may have been coerced or obtained through psychological pressure from interrogators. Given that the conversation involved a minor, specifically a schoolboy, the officers had significant control over him when left alone. Despite the lawyer's efforts, the Tyler was ultimately imprisoned. Mississippi's laws were quite strict, making it nearly impossible to appeal a conviction, and the process was extremely challenging. However, the lawyer and Tyler's friends and family remained hopeful. They found it hard to believe that he could commit such a brutal murder. Tyler had positive relationships with his family members, including Joey, and he did not have any mental health issues or disorders. Moreover, there was no clear motive for the murder, and many thought Christie's account was unlikely. People believed that Tyler's conviction stemmed from mistakes made by the court and that his confession was influenced by manipulation from his half-sister. Tyler's attorney was determined. The defense acknowledged that a review of the case would only be possible if they appealed vigorously. However, even if they were successful, the review process could take years. As a result, Tyler's trial attracted considerable public attention. In January 2007, a turning point came when the Mississippi Supreme Court agreed to review Tyler's case. This was a significant achievement for the defense attorney, who had finally gotten the court's attention. By this point, Tyler had been in prison for nearly 4 years. According to the expert, there were 2 people holding the rifle. However, he could not determine how many people were involved when the shot was fired based on the trajectory of the bullet. Other experts later challenged his testimony, claiming that it was biased. This put the Mississippi prosecutor's office in a difficult position because they lacked additional evidence. In order to simplify the situation and possibly reduce his sentence, the prosecution offered Tyler a plea deal. They suggested that he could plead guilty to a lesser charge in exchange for a lighter sentence, with the chance of immediate release because he had already served a long sentence. However, Tyler did not want to go free. He was determined to prove his innocence. Rejecting the plea deal meant that Tyler faced the possibility of being convicted again, which could have resulted in him being sentenced to life in prison. Tyler has vehemently denied the charges against him, maintaining that he is innocent and will not plead guilty to a crime he did not commit. On October 28, 2008, Tyler's retrial began. His attorneys viewed the case as a fight for justice. In their opening statements, the defense attorneys emphasized that the legal charges were brought against the 13-year-old boy as if he were an adult. The criminal investigation was riddled with serious errors, and the police failed to respect Tyler's rights during questioning. Following Tyler's confession, law enforcement focused solely on determining his guilt without investigating the truth of his statements. There were significant discrepancies between Tyler's confession and the available evidence, and police were aware of these discrepancies. Authorities had only circumstantial evidence, some of which the attorney believed could be challenged by Christy, Tyler's sister. The defense hoped her testimony would be important in disproving the claim of bias against Tyler. However, on her attorney's advice, Christy chose not to answer any questions, which came as a surprise. The decision suggested to the jury that she might be hiding something. Christy appeared to have selfish motives. She had no concern for the fate of her half-younger brother, and she had good reason to want her husband, Joey, dead. He had a $300,000 life insurance policy that would have paid her a substantial payout if he had died. Before the murder, Christy had asked about the amount of money she would receive upon her husband's death, even though Joey had signed a confidentiality agreement prohibiting such questions. However, she believed that it would be an opportunity that would benefit her since she was the named beneficiary. During the trial, Christy's father testified that she had asked him to provide her with a weapon to help her kill her husband. She had promised him a new Cadillac with the insurance money if he helped her. However, he denied participating in any crime and suggested that she simply divorce Joey. Christy responded that divorce would prevent her from receiving the insurance money, which further exposed her selfish intentions. The attorney was convinced that Christy intended to kill her husband and had manipulated younger brother into pleading guilty to avoid responsibility. At the time of the murder, Tyler Edmonds was an exemplary student with no history of violence or crime. Tyler respected his elders, attended church regularly, and was active in sports, which made him well-liked in the community. No one thought he would be involved in such a violent crime. The defense faced a significant challenge when the prosecutor's office showed the jury a video of Tyler confessing to the crime. In the video, he claimed that he had helped his sister kill her husband. However, the video did not capture the moment Christy entered the room and pressured Tyler into confessing. This omission became a major obstacle to proving Tyler's innocence. To counter the prosecution's claims, the defense needed to convince the jury that his confession was coerced and false. The attorney planned to call an expert on facial expressions and gestures to support this argument, but unfortunately, the judge prohibited the use of such testimony. The defense attorney changed course and decided to focus on inconsistencies in Tyler's testimony. There were several troubling aspects in his confession. For example, Tyler claimed to have seen a large fountain of blood after the rifle shot. However, a forensic expert stated that such a fountain of blood would not have been possible with a head injury, since blood does not immediately begin to flow from that type of wound. Additionally, there would have been no splatter of blood. In fact, the victim had only been shot once with a .22 caliber rifle, creating a small wound and leaving the skull intact. Therefore, it is clear that Tyler fabricated this detail in his story. This scenario is like a fantasy. Tyler had no idea what happened because he never entered Joey's bedroom during the time of the murder. Furthermore, the judge in the retrial favored the defense by allowing the jury to see a video of Tyler recanting his confession, which had been barred from previous hearings. Tyler gave the police a new version of events that completely contradicted his original confession. Tyler said that on the morning of the murder, Joey, Tyler, and Christy had planned to take a short trip to see Tyler's father. He was in the car when he heard strange noises coming from the house but chose not to investigate. Christy then rushed out of the house. On the way back from the trip, Christy revealed to Tyler that she wanted him to take some responsibility for the massacre, believing that this would help her avoid the death penalty. She seemed unconcerned about Tyler's future, even though he had not yet finished school. Tyler agreed to her proposal because he genuinely wanted to help and protect Christy. October 31, 2008 marked the final day of the retrial, and the jury's decision was based on what testimony they felt was credible. On that day, Tyler presented his defense and admitted that he had pleaded guilty at Christy's urging, believing that as a minor he would not face prison time. And Christy believed that Tyler's confession would help her avoid the death penalty and save her life. Tyler and Christy had agreed that he would take the blame for the crime after she signaled him, but they never specified what that signal would be. During the interrogation following the murder, Christy entered the room, sat next to Tyler, and took his hand, which he interpreted as the signal. After the prosecutor's final statements, the defense attorney made his closing statement. He argued that aside from 13-year-old Tyler's confession, there was no substantial evidence linking Tyler to the murder. He also expressed doubts about the reliability of a child's testimony under such stressful circumstances. The jury's anxiety seemed endless. When they finally returned, 12 jurors declared Tyler, then 19, innocent. After serving 5 years in prison for a crime he did not commit, he was finally free. However, the question of justice for the family of the deceased Joey remained unresolved. Joey's parents were simply seeking the truth. They were not interested in revenge or punishment. All they wanted was to understand what really happened that tragic day. After being released from prison, Tyler Edmonds returned to normal life, graduated from college, and earned a medical degree. He was eager to pursue higher education in his field. Subsequently, he moved from Mississippi to Florida, where he was not known. He still resides there today and has shared in several interviews that he continues to be haunted by the consequences of the false accusation against him. Although he cannot forget the 5 years he spent in prison, he has managed to adjust to life outside. While some states require that detectives communicate with suspects only in the presence of their parents, many parents lack sufficient knowledge of the criminal code and their rights, leading to frequent disregard for these seemingly straightforward regulations. The involvement of a lawyer is an essential step. Following Tyler's retrial and acquittal, the prosecutor's office began investigating forensic expert Stephen Henn. He claimed he could determine how many people were handling the rifle based on the bullet's trajectory. This bold assertion raised concerns about his expertise and impartiality. As for Christy, she received a 12-year prison sentence for her role in the crime after the initial trial. While incarcerated, she used her manipulative skills to deceive 2 cellmates into assisting her. However, her plan ultimately failed, and in 2008, she faced a retrial for the murders of Joey Fulgham. After her brother was acquitted, she was convicted and sentenced to death. In 2010, Christy's attorney filed an appeal, and after a retrial, her death sentence was changed to life in prison. Christy later wrote a brief letter of apology to her half-brother Tyler, saying only, "Older sister sorry, me know why." This cynical letter only infuriated the Tyler, who had spent nearly 6 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit, all for his older sister's sake. As a result, Tyler severed all ties with Christy, believing that her only interest in him was to use him for her own selfish reasons. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Chloe and Aubrey Berry. Wack-BJ is a small coastal settlement in Canada with a population of under 20,000 people. It is an ideal place for starting a family with a united, quiet, safe, but still well-developed community. On December 25, 2017, the town was alive with the Christmas spirit. The windows of the apartments along the street sparkled with colorful lights, and homes were beautifully decorated. However, the festive atmosphere was disrupted by the flashing lights of police cars responding to a tragic incident. Sarah worked for the local ferry service, which connected the mainland with coastal areas and several nearby islands for communication and cargo deliveries. She studied at the University of Victoria and completed an internship for this position. Prior to this, she worked in the public relations group. She was active and energetic in everything she pursued, which brought her success. Her relationship with Andrew blossomed quickly after they met, and they soon took their relationship to the next level. They got married and started a family, welcoming their daughter Chloe in 2013. 2 years later, they gave birth to their second daughter, Aubrey. At the beginning of their relationship, the love of young couple Sarah and Andrew seemed sincere and sweet. However, the pressures of daily life began to take a toll on their bond. After the family has children, their relationship deteriorated significantly. To make matters worse, Sarah faced the heartbreak of losing her father in a car accident. All of these things caused Andrew's behavior to change a lot. He became anxious, prone to outbursts over minor issues, and often directed verbal insults at Sarah. It was clear that Sarah's father had previously helped control Andrew's temper, but now that support was gone. As a consequence, Andrew's aggressiveness increased. Initially, Sarah attempted to resolve conflicts and kept their issues private, hoping this tough time would pass. Unfortunately, matters only worsened. During a tense argument over custody of her two daughters, Aubrey and Chloe, Andrew made serious threats, claiming that he would harm the entire family if the situation did not change. Sarah was deeply troubled by these threats, and Andrew's anger became increasingly uncontrollable. Andrew's behavior became erratic and dangerous. When he got angry, he drove recklessly, creating hazardous situations on the road. At first, he tried not to act like that when his daughter was there, but he eventually lost control and engaged in these antics even with the daughter in the car. It is clear that this marriage was once a happy one, but now it has become seriously dangerous for Sarah and her daughter, who were growing up in a hostile and unsafe environment. Despite this, Sarah made efforts to maintain the marriage. Months went by until Sarah reached her breaking point. She decided to end the relationship and told Andrew directly that he needed to move out that day. Instead of leaving calmly, Andrew has sparked another debate, barging into his wife's bedroom and trying to strangle her. Sarah managed to escape, grabbed her phone, and called the police. Andrew continued his aggressive behavior until the police arrived, clearly displaying his violent nature. He was quickly arrested and taken to the police station. After this episode, Sarah obtained a restraining order, preventing Andrew from approaching her or their children. This brought a sense of relief to the family, as Andrew was now under control. He moved into his own apartment and lived alone, while Sarah took care of their two daughters. She worked hard and often worked overtime to earn money to raise her children. Meanwhile, her mother also helps take care of the children while she is at work. During this time, Sarah and Andrew finalized their divorce, and Sarah was awarded full custody of their children. Because of his aggressive behavior, Andrew lost his visitation rights and was ordered to pay alimony. For 3 months, Sarah focused entirely on her daughters, giving them her love and attention. However, everything shifted when Andrew returned, saying he missed his daughters and wanted to meet with them. Sarah refused his request, and he was unable to see the children. At that point, Andrew seemed to have changed. With the help of a lawyer and witness testimonies, he wanted to protest the court's decision to grant custody of the child. Amendments were made to the court order, allowing him to see his daughters on weekends. He was proud that he now had official permission to meet with them. Sarah was responsible for bringing the girls Aubrey and Chloe to meet their father, Andrew, and she made sure to supervise their visits. During these times, Andrew was able to connect well with his daughters. Unfortunately, this was just the start of a tragedy. A few years later, issues arose concerning alimony and the shared ownership of the house. The court ordered Andrew to pay a large amount in alimony. Meanwhile, there were ongoing discussions about how to divide the jointly owned house for the benefit of their children. Andrew, the young father, refused to contribute any money towards the house. Consequently, the court allowed Sarah to buy Andrew's share of the property, valued at $60,000, for only $20,000, after deducting the alimony debt. The agreement means that Sarah will have full ownership of the house and will no longer be able to claim maintenance payments. Sarah accepted these terms. However, Andrew opposed this arrangement and sought to contest the court's decision. During this time, he frequently took their daughters to spend time, as the court permitted him to do so without the presence of their mother or any guardianship authorities. Soon, Sarah began to notice increasingly concerning signs regarding her children. After Andrew returning them one day, she discovered a bruise-like mark on Aubrey's head. When she called Andrew, he explained that Aubrey had accidentally hit herself while playing. However, during a later conversation, Aubrey revealed that Andrew had attempted to touch her inappropriately. Andrew dismissed the accusation as absurd, but Sarah believed her daughter. Determined to protect her children, she contacted Child Protection Services. An investigation was launched, and during this time, Andrew's interactions with Chloe and Aubrey were closely monitored. Although Sarah and Aubrey expressed concerns, law enforcement and Child Protection Services found no evidence of any misconduct by Andrew, leading them to close the case. Andrew insisted that Aubrey's bruise was caused by her falling, which appeared plausible since he stated he had accidentally bumped into her during a game. Sarah argued that Andrew posed a danger to their daughters, Aubrey và Chloe. She noted that he had previously exhibited strange and suspicious behavior, and the daughters were often reluctant to spend time with him. In an effort to protect her children, Sarah attempted to restrict Andrew's visits. In late 2016, she once again questioned his ability to care for them after he left Aubrey alone in a stroller in a public area while he walked away. Furthermore, Sarah claimed that Andrew spoke badly about her in front of the children, which she thought was his way of trying to turn them against her. During the trial, Sarah and Andrew shared their accounts of the incident and presented their arguments. Ultimately, the situation remained unchanged. Aubrey và Chloe continued to live with Sarah, while Andrew was allowed to take them on holidays and weekends. The judge viewed Andrew as a caring father capable who could provide well for his daughters. The court concluded that Andrew's aggressive behavior was only temporary and linked to domestic issues, with no evidence of child abuse presented. Andrew was given another chance, and both he and Sarah received decisions that they must comply with so they can continue to communicate with 6-year-old daughter Chloe and 4-year-old daughter Aubrey. Chloe and Aubrey were bright, cheerful children with distinct personalities and interests. Chloe had just begun first grade at a local school, where she discovered her passion for horse riding, a skill her cousin had been teaching her since she was young. She also had a talent for art. Meanwhile, Aubrey was getting ready to start school. The sisters were full of energy and creativity, and they shared a close bond and a love for artistic activities. During the court hearings, the guardianship service assessed Sarah, the girl's mother, and found her to be an excellent parent. She worked hard to maintain a good relationship with her daughters, both during their time as a family and after the divorce. The judge required both Sarah and Andrew to complete special training courses, and Andrew was actively involved in the process. Unfortunately, this wasn't enough to prevent a tragic outcome. According to the custody agreement, Aubrey va Chloe were scheduled to spend Christmas 2017 with their father, Andrew. They celebrated Sarah's birthday on December 21st at morning with the children, and then Sarah took Chloe and Aubrey to Andrew's apartment on Beach Drive. Andrew lived just steps from the marina, in an upscale part of the city with a view of the Pacific coast. However, he is facing many great difficulties, including a financial crisis. He had quit his job, lost his main source of income, and developed a gambling addiction. As a result, he was unable to pay alimony or even provide basic necessities for himself and the children. From the beginning, Sarah believed it was a mistake to take Aubrey and Chloe to see Andrew. A court order obligated her to do so, and failing to comply could lead to serious repercussions for her. Sarah was especially hesitant to let Aubrey and Chloe spend the Christmas holidays with him, as she felt it was unfair, but she felt she had no alternative. Sarah asked Andrew to leave the children with her for her birthday, but he immediately threatened to sue, so she was forced to comply. As Sarah approached Andrew's apartment, her anxiety intensified. She noticed from a distance that the lights in the windows were off. For several weeks, Aubrey va Chloe had shared that during their visits with Andrew, they enjoyed using flashlights as if they were camping, which they found entertaining. Sarah was aware that Andrew had left his job in May and are having a lot of financial difficulties, which might explain why the electricity had been cut off. To avoid making the situation more tense and affect the children's vacation, she decided not to talk about the issue with Andrew and the children right away. However, she planned to address it later, as she was looking for ways to restrict Andrew meet to Aubrey va Chloe. When saying goodbye to Aubrey va Chloe, Sarah was understood that they would stay with Andrew until noon on December 25th, after which he was expected to return them. Upon returning home, Sarah noticed that Chloe had forgotten her favorite stuffed toy. She took the toy and brought it to Chloe. When she knocked on the window of Andrew's apartment, both Aubrey va Chloe appeared at the blinds in their holiday outfits, smiling and looking happy. This made Sarah feel a bit more at ease. She gave the daughters the toy and left, anticipating that she would see them again in a few days. On Christmas morning, Sarah woke up in a surprisingly quiet house and began her usual chores to pass the time until Aubrey va Chloe returned. During this time, she cleaned the house, decorated for the holiday, and placed presents under the tree, all in an effort to make the daughters happy. By 2 p.m., Sarah's parents arrived, but she was starting to worry because Aubrey va Chloe had not yet returned from Andrew's house. Andrew was supposed to return Aubrey and Chloe by noon, but Sarah had called and texted him several times without getting a response. She then tried to contact Andrew's sister, but she also ignored Sarah's calls and messages. Growing more worried, Sarah decided to go look for the children with her mother, leaving her father at home in case Andrew arrived with the daughters. When Sarah and her mother arrived at Andrew's apartment, Aubrey va Chloe were no longer at the window. Inside, the place felt eerily quiet and empty. Sarah couldn't see what was happening through the blinds. She knocked and shouted at the window, but there was no response, which only increased her fear. In desperation, they decided to speak with the neighbors. One neighbor mentioned that he had heard the children talking early in the morning and, closer to midday, he heard loud noises coming from the apartment. Initially, he thought nothing of it, but now it seemed suspicious. He also noted that he hadn't seen any strangers near the building. Alarmed, Sarah and her mother quickly contacted the police to report Aubrey va Chloe's disappearance. When the first police officer arrived at the scene, he attempted to contact Andrew, the apartment's owner, but received no answer, just as no one responded to Sarah's screams. The officer then tried to open the door and discovered it was not locked. Inside, the lights were off, and flipping the switch had no effect. It became clear that Andrew's electricity and water had been cut off due to unpaid utility bills, and he was facing eviction. Using a flashlight, the officer was met with a shocking sight that resembled a horror movie scene. Blood was splattered everywhere, including the ceiling, prompting him to immediately call for backup. The police officers cautiously, weapons drawn, aware that the killer responsible for the horrific massacre might still be inside. They followed a bloody footprint to the bathroom, where they discovered Andrew, who was naked and severely injured with multiple wounds to his chest. He was still breathing, but each breath seemed increasingly difficult. In the next room, they found Chloe on the bed. She was already dead. Her body showed numerous cuts and bruises, indicating she had been beaten with a blunt object. Nearby, a bloody baseball bat lay on the floor among her clothes. Aubrey was found in a similar state as Chloe, dressed in blood-soaked pajamas, with splatters even on the ceiling. Both children, Aubrey and Chloe, had suffered multiple lacerations and stab wounds, similar to those found on their father, Andrew. The police checked Aubrey and Chloe's pulses several times, but they were confirmed dead. An ambulance quickly arrived to assist Andrew. Due to the cramped space in the bathroom, he was placed on a stretcher and prepared to be carried out of the apartment. At that moment, he regained consciousness, looked at the medics, and simply asked them to end his life. Andrew was taken to hospital with other police officers, and they hoped to question him once his health has stabilized. Meanwhile, they informed Sarah that both of her daughters, Aubrey and Chloe, were dead. Overcome with grief, she screamed hysterically and desperately tried to enter the apartment. Sarah had many questions, and so did the investigators, about the brutal murders of her two young children on Christmas Day. She believed she knew the answer: their father had killed them. Given the severity of the injuries, Andrew quickly became the primary suspect. Sarah warned that he was a danger to himself and Aubrey and Chloe due to the nature of the wounds. The police thought he might be more willing to talk while in the hospital, as they often obtain truthful confessions in such situations. Therefore, they wanted to interview Andrew to uncover what had happened to the children and to him. The police suspected Andrew had harmed Aubrey and Chloe, defenseless children, and after realizing the gravity of his actions, he might have attempted to end his life. Aubrey and Chloe's bodies were so severely damaged that the expert believed he first killed Chloe, then he killed Aubrey. Chloe suffered multiple severe head injuries from a baseball bat, which led to a fractured skull. Additionally, she had 26 stab wounds. Some of her wounds were inflicted before her death, while others occurred posthumously. The cause of death was identified as blood loss. Aubrey's situation was tragically severe. She had 32 stab wounds, leading to fatal blood loss. The medical examiner determined that the attacker had flipped the children over twice to stab them in both the front and back. He appeared to be enraged and intended to ensure that the girls would not survive Christmas. Meanwhile, forensic investigators thoroughly examined the apartment and discovered men's jeans and a blood-soaked t-shirt, both belonging to Andrew. A knife, clearly the murder weapon, was also located at the scene. The amount of blood in the apartment was so much that a team of experts was called in to assist in the investigation. Experts discovered many signs that there were efforts to clean up the scene, including fingerprints on the knife and patterned socks. Blood traces were even found in the refrigerator, indicating that the perpetrator had rummaged through it after the attack. In one of the rooms, a note addressed to his sister was found. In this note, Andrew expressed a long list of disappointments about his difficulties with Sarah, and felt misunderstood by the woman he loved deeply. He conveyed a sense of betrayal and recounted the many struggles he faced during his marriage and after his divorce. According to his confession, the only source of happiness in his life was his children, which led him to decide to end their lives together. It was clearly a suicide note. After investigating the crime scene, the police concluded that Andrew had attacked and brutally killed his children, Aubrey, 4 years old, and Chloe, 6 years old. Following the incident, he entered the bathroom and attempted to harm himself, believing these injuries would also result in his death. However, doctors assessed that none of his self-inflicted wounds were life-threatening, so he survived. Andrew soon regained his composure and was placed under medical supervision, where he admitted to self-harm. After receiving treatment, he was arrested and charged with double murder. When Andrew was taken to the police station, Sarah was already there with her parents. The police believed that Andrew had harmed the children, and he confessed to his actions, which caused Sarah to burst into tears. She had to be taken away from the station because she was inconsolable. It is hard to imagine her despair and grief, especially since she had tried desperately to protect her daughters from their father. Despite filing complaints with Child Protection Services and taking legal action, Sarah could not provide evidence to prove that Andrew was a danger, and her claims were not believed. Tragically, her daughters were killed by their father. The case received widespread attention and many people held memorial services to honor Aubrey and Chloe, innocent girls who suffered. The public was outraged by Andrew's actions and expressed support for Sarah. This incident sparked a worldwide reevaluation of the child protection system and raised questions about the judge who deemed Andrew a father thoughtful and loving to his children. The judge's decision granted Andrew unsupervised access to Aubrey and Chloe, which ultimately resulted in their deaths. However, no disciplinary actions were taken against the judge or the Child Protection Service. The victims of the tragic massacre, Aubrey and Chloe, were cremated. During the investigation, the complicated relationship between Andrew and Sarah came to light. Andrew is having a lot of trouble with his finances. He left his job in May 2017 and had already begun having trouble keeping up with his rent and utility bills, leading to his electricity being cut off. His financial problems were largely fueled by his gambling addiction. Although Andrew earned a decent wage of around $200 per shift, but during this time, he became addicted to playing cards. He attempted to recover his losses, but things only worsened. He started borrowing money from anyone who would lend it to him. His gambling addiction spiraled out of control, with his gambling expenses reaching about $3,000 each month. In the fall of 2015, Andrew won a big amount of $100,000, but feeling overconfident, he quickly lost it all. In an attempt to win back his losses, he borrowed $10,000 from a man named Paul. Desperate to repay this loan, he continued to take out additional loans, while losing interest in his job, eventually quitting. By spring 2017, he was in deep financial trouble, owing approximately $225,000, with all his credit limits maxed out. Andrew was in a desperate situation, even thinking about withdrawing his savings from a pension fund. He couldn't afford to buy food and had to ask his neighbors for help to feed his daughters during their visit. His life was filled with ongoing tragedy. During the investigation, police found disturbing search queries in his internet history. About a month before the double murder, he had been searching for ways to end his own life. His problems grew worse, and on Christmas Day, he made a tragic decision. He used a brutal method to kill his daughters, doing this act coldly and mercilessly, which makes people doubt his love for them. On January 16th, the hearings for the double murder case began. The prosecutor presented detailed information to the jury about Andrew's relationship and life circumstances just before the crime occurred. The prosecution argued that Andrew willingly put himself in this situation because he could not overcome his gambling addiction. They described his actions as premeditated, using evidence like his internet browsing history to support their argument. In contrast, the defense attorney highlighted flaws in the investigation, pointing out that a patrolman had left the scene while waiting for backup, which left the situation inside unclear. The lawyer argued that Andrew and his children were victims of a killer seeking revenge for Andrew's debts after the officer had left the scene. This allowed the real perpetrator to escape through the fire exit. However, the prosecution rejected these things because the scene was under constant surveillance. There were no signs of a break-in, and the attacker could not have quietly exited the scene without being seen by the police officer. Furthermore, statement of the defense contradicted Andrew's confession made at the hospital. During his hospital stay, he even asked the medical staff to help him die, indicating that he had inflicted injuries on himself and wanted to end his life. It is clear from Andrew's suicide note that he intended to end his life and harm the daughters so that they would be with him in death. However, the lawyer maintained that the family could have been victims of a stranger, a killer who unexpectedly found Andrew and the children in the apartment. Alternatively, they could have all been random victims of a maniac. On April 25, 2017, a woman was attacked and stabbed near Andrew's house, but the police could not identify her attacker. The defense suggested that the same person could be responsible for both this attack and the murder of Andrew's children, who remains at large. However, the details of the wounds and the circumstances of each incident were different, indicating Andrew's guilt. During the presentation of the crime scene and evidence related to the murders of Aubrey and Chloe, Andrew started to cry. The prosecutor asserted that their father, Andrew, was responsible for the murders. One key piece of evidence was blood on the floor that matched Andrew's. If the attacker had been a stranger, they would probably have worn shoes typically found in a home. However, the shoes Andrew was wearing when he was arrested matched those discovered at the crime scene. Also, the forensic expert pointed out that the injuries on Andrew and the daughters were the same. Andrew acknowledged that he had inflicted wounds on himself, and similar cuts were found on the children, indicating that the same person used the same weapon. At trial, the defense attorney argued that Sarah had put pressure on Andrew, leading to the possibility of him acting aggressively. They believe Sarah is the main cause of Andrew's unstable mental health. In response, Sarah countered these claims, saying that Andrew had been aggressive for a long time, which led to their divorce. She was only trying to protect her children from a dangerous and unpredictable situation, which is why she filed complaints with various authorities, all of which were ignored. Sarah was concerned about the safety of her daughters during visits. Recently, Andrew appeared to have changed for the better, but no one realized this was just his cover. The defense continued to argue for Andrew's innocence, portraying him as a victim of his circumstances. They mentioned that Andrew owed $200,000 to another man. Andrew claimed he couldn't pay his debts, which led to him being forced to keep a suspicious bag in his apartment, the contents of which he was unaware of. Various individuals resembling criminals would periodically come to collect it, and Andrew had given them a spare key. According to the lawyers, one of these individuals committed a violent act in the apartment. The prosecution questioned Andrew about why the attacker would kill Aubrey and Chloe in his apartment while he was there. Andrew claimed that he lost consciousness after being struck, and when he regained it, he found Aubrey và Chloe unresponsive. The attacker was still in the apartment, but due to the darkness, Andrew couldn't see his face clearly. However, he noted that the assailant was a dark-skinned man with dark hair. The attacker then ran into the kitchen, grabbed a knife, and tug of war, during which Andrew was struck multiple times and lost consciousness again. A mysterious bag was discovered during the investigation, but no evidence of any intruder was found, including DNA or fingerprints. The prosecution argued that Andrew's primary motive for the murders was financial distress. He was struggling to cope with life, unable to pay his debts or child support, leading him to consider killing his children to escape these obligations. The jury deliberated for 3 days and ultimately found Andrew guilty of double second-degree murder. He was sentenced to life in prison, eligible for parole in 22 years. Andrew showed no emotion when the verdict was announced, shocking Sarah's family because the sentence was too light. They also found themselves unable to contest the verdict. Welcome back, mystery lovers. Today's case is going to keep you on the edge of your seat. The case of Anel Baez Alvarez. Anel Baez Alvarez was born on March 17, 1998, in Guamuchil, Sinaloa, Mexico. She was the second child of Ilda and Hugo, with an older brother named Omar. Later, the family welcomed a younger sister, Adriana. Initially, she was a shy child. She gradually became more confident, showing grace and charm. She was energetic and always tried to entertain those around her. Anel's father was a tailor, and the family was prosperous, close-knit, and happy. However, the family was no longer happy when Anel's mother was diagnosed with cancer in the early 2010s. The children had to grow up quickly to take care of her. After a tough battle with the illness, Ilda passed away in 2012. The family was devastated, but they didn't give up. They supported each other through the pain and trying to make life better. The tragedy brought the sisters, Adriana and Anel, so close that they shared everything, facing sadness and problems together. Anel remained a cheerful and friendly girl with a passion for dancing and music. As she entered high school, she became an ideal daughter, helping with household chores, caring for her younger sister, and keeping up her good grades. Cooking for the family became one of her favorite activities, especially making desserts, which became her specialty. Anel conquered her shyness and became one of the most popular girls at school. She also started a music group as a singer, where she developed a love for the ballad Amor Eterno. At the same time, Anel met someone who would become her best friend, at least for a while. Her name was Erandi Elizabeth Gutierrez. They became an inseparable duo, earning the admiration of everyone around them and being considered the most popular girls in school. They showed their friendship through social media posts. On October 14, 2012, Anel uploaded a photo with Erandi, expressing her happiness for their friendship. Anel thanked God for the chance to be close to her and even wrote that Erandi had become not just a friend, but a sister to her. Initially, everything was wonderful, but over time, the situation changed. Although they were the same age, their personalities were completely different. Anel was a sweet girl who loved love songs and spending time with her family. In contrast, Erandi lived in an vice's environment and became increasingly involved with drugs, also known in Mexico as bucona. Erandi frequently attended events featuring musicians from this culture, such as the Caliber 50 concert during the Carnival celebrations in Guamuchil in 2014. She also had a very clear political stance. Once, Erandi posted on social media that she took part in a march in support of Joaquin Guzman Lora. On her page, she wrote, "March for El Chapo's freedom. We must rally behind this great cause." This message was accompanied by a photo. Unlike Erandi, Anel usually didn't share her point of view on social media and didn't agree with the views Erandi supported. As a result, the distance between them grew. In 2014, Erandi and Anel of them started attending Guamuchil High School at the Autonomous University of Sinaloa, but they barely spoke to each other. Each found her own group of friends. Anel began spending time with Melissa, Karen, Manuel, and Maria Jose. These friends had healthy lifestyles, followed her everywhere, and admired her. Maria, who had known Anel since elementary school, saw her as the leader of the group. Anel took on this role, and she always looking out for everyone. Anel was very polite and organized. Despite growing apart from Erandi, but she never told her father or siblings about their falling out. Around the same time, Erandi started acting strangely on social media. She posted negative and concerning messages on her page. Some posts were quite alarming, such as, pregnant 13-year-old girls taking psychoactive substances, and bizarre statements such as, "Her mom is upset that she killed her ex and buried him in her garden," or, "It is fortunate that she is envied by the dead." The initial posts didn't make much sense, as Arandi took them from forums or songs. However, with time, some messages began to appear threatening. On February 5, 2014, she posted that she was going to bury someone by the end of the year. On February 23, she wrote that she might seem very calm, but in her head, she had killed the person at least 3 times, and every day her mind was filled with new ideas. A few days later, Arandi wrote that she thanked God no one heard her thoughts, and everything would definitely happen the next day. She kept writing more and more posts, and became very creepy. On March 3, Arandi posted, "Maybe not now and not tomorrow, but soon. She won't say anything to that person, but that person should know that she has destroyed them mentally." The last post was on March 16, where she wrote, "This really drives she to despair." No one in her circle knew who these threats were directed at. However, rumors started to spread at school. Many said that Arandi was upset with Anil because they were no longer friends. Some even accused Arandi of being jealous of Anil because everyone liked her. However, Anil wasn't worried about Arandi's social media posts. She celebrated her birthday with a big party, wearing a beautiful pink dress, and was the star of the evening. Her life seemed perfect until March 19, when her absence raised concerns in her family. Hugo received a call from Adriana's school, informing him that Anil hadn't picked her up as usual. Initially, he wasn't too concerned, thinking she might have overslept or was with friends after school. He quickly went to pick up Adriana. On the way, Hugo tried calling Anil to see if everything was fine, but she didn't answer. He assumed she was probably still sleeping. After picking up Adriana, Hugo tried to contact Anil again, but she didn't answer. He repeatedly called her number, without success, which made him more worried. Hugo headed to her house in the Los Fuentes area. When he arrived, he noticed the front door was wide open. Upon entering the living room, both he and Adriana saw that some items had been moved. They thought it might have been a robbery. After that, they shouted Anil's name and searched desperately throughout the house, but they also couldn't find her. Finally, Hugo arrived in Anil's room and found the door locked, which worried him. He knocked several times, but Anil didn't answer. In desperation, Hugo broke down the door. Inside, he was shocked to find Anil's lifeless body on the floor, covered in numerous wounds with blood stains around. He immediately called the police, who arrived quickly. Upon examining the scene, the officers initially believed that a very strong person or a group had committed the crime. Although there were some blood stains, they were minimal, suggesting the attacker had attempted to clean them up. During the autopsy, the forensic expert revealed that Anil had suffered 65 stab wounds. The officers concluded that the attack was driven by someone with intense hatred towards her. The detectives noticed that the doors and windows were not forced, suggesting Anil knew the assailant and allowed them into the house. They even considered the possibility that Anil had planned to meet this person that day. However, a check of her mobile phone revealed no evidence of any invitation to her home. It seemed more likely that the encounter was by chance. With no surveillance cameras in the area, the officers interviewed neighbors. Some neighbors reported seeing a slender girl with black hair leaving the house. These accounts helped narrow down the suspects. Afterward, officers began questioning Anil's close friends and family. All her relatives had alibis and insisted that Anil had no enemies, was very friendly, and they couldn't imagine anyone wishing her harm. However, detectives found a post on Arandi's social network very suspicious, where she expressed shock at Anil's death. Some people offered their condolences, but others began accusing Arandi of being the murderer. The post quickly filled with comments blaming Arandi and claiming she was guilty. She then deleted her account's social network, but by then, it was too late. Police questioned several of Anil's friends to understand the relationship between Erandi and Anil. They all said that the two of them no longer played together, and it was clear that Erandi envied Anil for her greater popularity. After the interviews, detectives checked Erandi's social media profiles and found all the threatening posts she had made a few months earlier. However, that wasn't their only discovery. Just a few hours after it happened, Erandi posted that she was a fool and wondered what she had done. She was identified as the only suspect in the crime. This information was kept secret because officers worried Erandi might flee before they could arrest her. The agents patiently waited for the right moment. The case gained so much attention that hundreds of people gathered at a well-known funeral home in Guamachil to say goodbye to Anil. Friends, relatives, teachers, and classmates cried and hugged each other, struggling to believe that someone so young had passed away. Anil's funeral was very crowded, but two people were particularly noticeable, Erandi and her mother. Erandi entered the venue with her head down, and her long black hair partially hid her face. Her outfit was unusual for the hot weather. She wore a hoodie with the hood up and long sleeves, as if trying to hide something. Both she and her mother approached to offer condolences to Anil's family, then sat near the casket containing Anil's body. Everyone whispered and watched Erandi with tense expressions, noting how distressed she seemed. A few minutes after she arrived, officers quietly approached her and asked her to come with them to the police station. Erandi did not resist and went with the officer. The questioning started at the police station. At first, Erandi claimed to be innocent, but after a few questions, she broke down. She lifted her hoodie, showing scratches and bruises on her arms and torso. Erandi confessed that Anil caused these injuries while trying to defend herself. In December 2013, Anil posted a picture online with Erandi, where they appeared hugging, smiling, and partially naked. Erandi was upset because Anil posted a photo without her permission. She asked Anil to take it down, but Anil ignored her request. Eventually, Anil agreed to remove the photo, but by then, their friendship was broken beyond repair. The situation got worse when one of Erandi's classmates told her he had a compromising photo of her, which she suspected was the same one Anil had posted months earlier. From that point on, Erandi started thinking about how to get revenge. In the meantime, she expressed her anger on social media until she couldn't bear it anymore. On March 19, 2014, Erandi posted on her page, "In a world of 7 billion people, she only liked 3 of them." After that, she went to Anil's house in the Los Fuentes neighborhood. Erandi arrived at the door with 2 servings of ice cream and a big smile, saying she wanted to make amends and be friends again. Anil happily agreed and invited her inside. She even suggested they go upstairs to Anil's room on the 2nd floor to chat, just like old times. Once in the room, they started talking and eating ice cream. After a few minutes, Erandi suggested watching a movie. Erandi then said she needed to go to the bathroom and asked not to pause the movie. However, instead of going to the bathroom, Erandi went downstairs to the kitchen. She hid a sharp knife under her clothes and went back to the room where Anil was lying on the bed with her back to the door. Taking advantage of this, Erandi took out the knife and attacked her. Anil tried to defend herself by scratching, pushing, and punching, but she couldn't overpower Erandi. She lost too much blood and died, becoming a victim of a terrible crime. Erandi began to feel anxious, knowing she had to act quickly before Anil's family returned. She tried to clean up the blood using all the rags in the house, but there was so much that she could only clean a little. Eventually, she went to the bathroom, washed her hands, and changed into clothes from Anil's wardrobe. Then, Erandi closed the door to the room, leaving Anil's body inside, and ran out of the house, leaving the front door open. When Anil's relatives heard the story, they were outraged. They knew the tale about the photograph was false. Anil would never do such a thing, it wasn't in her nature. Additionally, Anil's friends stated they had never seen any such photograph. They argued that since both Arandi and Anil were quite popular, the photo would have certainly spread, and someone would have downloaded it. It became clear that envy was the real reason behind the crime. Nevertheless, the motive was no longer relevant. Arandi was the only suspect in the case. She was officially charged with involuntary manslaughter. The legal process moved quickly. Four officers escorted Arandi to the juvenile court proceedings at the prosecutor's office that handles cases involving minors. After a hearing lasting 1.5 hours, Arandi was found guilty. Even though it was clear she had executed a premeditated plan and the murder was intentional, but because she is only 16 years old, she was sentenced to 7 years in prison. She was transferred to the Juvenile Detention Center in Kaloa. Anil's family thought justice had been served and that it was all over, but they were very wrong. The defense filed an appeal, arguing that the trial took place in Kokon, which was incorrect, as the crime happened in the jurisdiction of Los Machos. The higher court decided to reopen the trial, this time in the appropriate jurisdiction. Despite the expedited process, the verdict was not overturned. This decision made the public extremely angry. Hundreds of Mexicans and foreigners shared images on social media with signs demanding justice for Anil. Several polls were conducted in which more than 5 million users voted, considering Arandi's sentence to be unfair. Many wanted her to receive a much longer sentence. The trial was retried, and Arandi was sentenced again to 7 years in prison. Hugo spoke with journalists and expressed his discontent. Although the sentence was not reduced, he believed Arandi's age was no reason not to impose a longer sentence. He hoped that at least she would serve the prescribed number of years. However, this didn't happen. On July 6, 2016, Arandi's sentence was reduced to 5 years. It was also decided that with good behavior, she could be released even sooner. State police had to close the courthouse gates as many journalists attempted to photograph her. This case became one of the most prominent in the country. Hugo was not informed about this hearing, which deeply angered him, worsening the situation further. On Friday, September 23, 2017, a hearing was held to assess Arandi's behavior in light of changes to the federal juvenile justice law. She was released after serving 3.5 years of her original sentence. Hugo left the court very dissatisfied, feeling he had witnessed a great injustice. He expressed his disappointment because the legislative reforms seemed to favor offenders instead of the victims.